Chapter 1346. He bowed respectfully to Xiao Chun, then handed over an unopened letter to Xiao Chun. The contents of the mission were recorded in the letter. Xiao Chun didn't think too much about it. After receiving the letter, he thanked the attendant, and Mei personally escorted him out of the cave dwelling. The mission hall had arranged a compulsory mission for him. Xiao Chun didn't have much resistance to it. After all, he had been in the Heavenly Een solar sect for a long time, and the Heavenly Een solar sect had treated the sacred palace very well over the years. Even now, Xiao Sheng and the other three were still cultivating in the Heavenly Een solar sect's secret cultivation realm, hoping to break through to the advanced quasi-saint stage as soon as possible. After receiving so many benefits, it was indeed time for him to do something. Therefore, Xiao Chun directly accepted the mission without any hesitation. After opening the letter, Xiao Chun immediately understood the mission's contents. It wasn't a very difficult mission. The mission only required Xiao Chun to find a saint-grade spirit herb, the heavenly sunflower. The reason why the chosen of the saint ranking was needed was because the heavenly sunflower grew in a very special place. In the human race's territory, the heavenly sunflower only existed in the land of 100 rivers, and the land of 100 rivers could be said to be the most chaotic place in the human race's territory. Because of the geographical environment, there were many prisoners on death row who had committed crimes in the human race's territory. They had all fled there. These prisoners gathered together and formed many gangs. These gangs could be said to have committed all kinds of crimes, and at the same time, they were very bold. They weren't afraid of the disciples of the various sects at all, and killed them without hesitation. Therefore, to find the heavenly sunflower, one had to go deep into the land of 100 rivers. In order to protect oneself in the land of 100 rivers, it was best to let the chosen of the saint ranking personally go there. The land of 100 rivers, heavenly sunflower. The mission's records were very detailed. After reading it, a wave of spiritual energy emerged and instantly destroyed the letter. Now that he knew the content and requirements of this mission, Xiao Chun didn't think too much about it. After returning to the backyard, he told Qin Shu and the other two girls about the mission. Hearing that Xiao Chun wanted to go to the land of 100 rivers, the four girls naturally clamored to follow Xiao Chun, but they were rejected by Xiao Chun. There's nothing in the land of 100 rivers. Why are you coming with me? Stay in the Heavenly Yin Yang sect. The free time limit given by Patriarch Yin Yang Zi is almost up. Take this last chance to cultivate properly. Yin Yang Zi had promised Xiao Chun that she would allow the Holy Palace disciples to use the cultivation mystic realms of the Heavenly Yin and Solar sect for free for a year. Now that there were less than 3 months left, Xiao Chun naturally wouldn't allow the four women to follow him to the land of 100 rivers. Instead of following him, it would be better for them to stay in the Heavenly Yin Yang sect and cultivate properly. One must know that the Heavenly Yin Yang sect had many cultivation mystic realms that were extremely helpful to everyone. How could they waste such an opportunity? Xiao Chun didn't agree to the four girls going with him. Seeing this, the four girls knew that they couldn't persuade Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun might go along with them on small matters, but when it came to these matters, it was difficult to change Xiao Chun's mind once he had made up his mind. They were a little disappointed, but there was nothing they could do. Moreover, Xiao Chun had promised that he would return as soon as possible. It wasn't far from the Heavenly Yin Yang sect to the land of 100 rivers through the transmission array. It would only take 1 or 2 days. Including the time spent searching for the heavenly sunflower, Xiao Chun estimated that half a month should be enough for a round trip. After greeting Qin Shu and the other girls, as well as the rest of the Holy Palace disciples, Long Yang, Feng Zhu, Long Kuei, and Long Qi had already left the Heavenly Yin Yang sect a few days ago to travel elsewhere. Xiao Chun naturally couldn't find them. It was the first time Long Kuei and Long Qi had left the Dragon Clan, so they were naturally very curious about the human territory. Long Yang and Feng Zhu had no choice but to bring the two sisters around the Heavenly Yin Yang sect. After greeting everyone and explaining the matter, early the next morning, Xiao Chun left the Heavenly Yin Yang sect alone and rushed to the land of 100 rivers through the transmission array. There was no transmission array in the heavenly yin-yang sect that led directly to the land of 100 rivers. The closest transmission array to the land of 100 rivers was located in a sect called the Tianyun clan. This clan was built on the periphery of the land of 100 rivers, which was only half a day's journey away. Of course, the Tianyun clan was also a subsidiary clan of the heavenly yin-yang sect. He directly went to the Tianyun clan through the transmission array, and when Xiaochen appeared in the Tianyun clan, he was surprised to see that a total of 15 senior members of the Tianyun clan, led by the clan master, had already been waiting for him there. Clearly, the clan master of the Tianyun clan knew that Xiaochen was coming and had come to greet him in person. Seeing Xiaochen walk out of the transmission array, the clan master of the Tianyun clan took the initiative to greet him and said with a smile, "Saint Xiaochen, it's an honor to have you here. I'm the clan master of the Tianyun clan, Zhou Yunzheng." The Tianyun clan was just a saint-level clan, and there were only less than 10 saints in the clan, including Zhou Yunzheng. In the human territory of the Central World, it was not considered a powerful clan. Over the years, it had also relied on the heavenly yin-yang sect to survive in the cracks. Therefore, although he was the leader of a clan, Zhou Yunzheng behaved very humbly in front of Xiaochen. This was normal. After all, the status of the clan master of saint-level clan was naturally incomparable to that of Xiaochen, who was the successor of the saint ranking. The difference between the two was too great. In the face of Zhou Yunzheng's enthusiasm, Xiaochen also smiled kindly and said, "Clan master, you're being too polite. Xiaochen is just passing by your clan this time, but there's something I'd like to ask for your help with." Hearing this, Zhou Yunzheng nodded without hesitation and said, "Please speak, successor. The Tianyun clan will not hesitate to go through fire and water." If a saint-level clan like the Tianyun clan could be related to Xiaochen, it would definitely be a great thing. So Zhou Yunzheng had no reason to refuse. Seeing this, Xiaochen smiled slightly and said, "Clan master, you're being too serious. I just want to know some things about the land of 100 rivers from you." The Tianyun clan was built on the periphery of the land of 100 rivers, and it was inevitable that they would meet with the major clans in the land of 100 rivers on a daily basis. Hence, they should have some understanding of the land of 100 rivers. Hence, Xiaochen also wanted to inquire about the situation in the land of 100 rivers. Hearing this, Zhou Yunzheng naturally wouldn't refuse and immediately invited Xiaochen to the main hall. At the same time that Xiaochen arrived at the Tianyun clan, a man in black stood in front of Bai Mushuang in the Bai family mansion. It was not difficult to tell from the aura of this person that he was a saint of the present age. Standing in front of Bai Mushuang with a calm expression, he said in a low voice, "Clan master, Xiaochen has arrived at the Tianyun clan, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1347. Xiaochen's every move was naturally under the control of the Bai family. So when Xiaochen had just arrived at the Tianyun clan through the teleportation array, the Bai family had already known about it. Hearing this, a strong murderous intent flashed in by Mushuang's eyes, and then he asked in an equally deep voice, "Are our people ready?" "Master, we have already arrived at the land of 100 rivers. As long as Xiaochen enters the land of 100 rivers, he definitely won't be able to come out," the Bai family powerhouse replied. 7 saints, 100 half-saints, and Dao emperors were the forces that the Bai family had sent out to kill Xiaochen. It could be said to be a luxurious lineup. Of course, the result of these people's actions this time was already destined to be death. Of course, even though they knew that they would die, they still chose to take action. The Bai family had naturally paid a lot in this, especially to the 7 saints. Bai Mushuang had personally promised that their descendants would become direct disciples of the Bai family and enjoy the treatment of direct disciples in front of everyone. The net had already been set, and all that was left was to wait for Xiaochen to jump in. Just as the Bai family was ready, Xiaochen only stayed in the Tianyun clan for a day, and the next day, he left and rushed to the land of 100 rivers. Originally, Zhou Yunzheng wanted to accompany Xiaochen, but he was rejected by Xiaochen. The reason was simple. Zhou Yunzheng's cultivation was only in the saint realm, and following Xiao Chun would not be of much use. Moreover, the mission this time was only to find the sky sunflower, and it would not be a hindrance if there were more people. Xiao Chun also learned a lot about the Land of 100 Rivers from Zhou Yunzheng. The Land of 100 Rivers was called that because it was rumored that there were hundreds of gangs here, and these gangs were all formed by the people who had wandered there. In the human territory, the major forces were not interested in the Land of 100 Rivers. The most fundamental reason was that the spirit qi in the Land of 100 Rivers was too thin. Due to geographical reasons, the Land of 100 Rivers was extremely unsuitable for people to live and cultivate in. Naturally, no force would care about such a wasteland. Therefore, as time passed, the Land of 100 Rivers became a place abandoned by the world. Unless there was no way to survive in the outside world, no one would be willing to enter the Land of 100 Rivers. To put it bluntly, those who lived in the Land of 100 Rivers were simply waiting for death. They wouldn't be able to achieve anything great in this lifetime. Of course, they didn't have any great ambitions in their hearts, so they chose to live in the Land of 100 Rivers. They were all people who had committed serious crimes or offended people they couldn't afford to offend. Generally speaking, they couldn't survive in the outside world, so they came to the Land of 100 Rivers. What a pitiful and sad group of people. However, in the Land of 100 Rivers, although the spiritual energy was thin, there were many unique spiritual grasses and spiritual fruits. The sky sunflower that Xiao Chun was looking for this time was one of them. According to Xiao Chen's idea, this trip to the Land of 100 Rivers should be low-key. After finding the sky sunflower, he should leave. It seemed like a very simple task, but who would have thought that the whole thing was actually a trap set up to kill Xiao Chun? With Xiao Chen's speed, he flew all the way. In less than half a day, he had already arrived at the entrance of the Land of 100 Rivers. From afar, the Land of 100 Rivers was extremely huge. Hundreds of mountain ranges came from all directions and converged here. Therefore, it was called the Land of 100 Rivers, which meant that all rivers converged here. The convergence of hundreds of mountain ranges also caused the terrain here to be extremely complicated. Because of the countless mountain ranges surrounding it, there was only one entrance to enter and exit the Land of 100 Rivers. According to the map that Zhou Yunzheng gave him, Xiao Chun directly arrived at the entrance of the Land of 100 Rivers. It was a valley that was only about 10 meters wide. This was the only entrance to the Land of 100 Rivers, and on both sides were towering cliffs that reached into the clouds. There was another special thing about the Land of 100 Rivers, and that was that it was impossible to fly. This was not because of the flight restriction formation, but because the Land of 100 Rivers was special to begin with. As a result, once someone entered the Land of 100 Rivers, no matter their cultivation, even the great sage would lose the ability to fly. It could be said that the Land of 100 Rivers was more like a huge cage. It gathered those who could not survive in the outside world and lived in this cage. Perhaps this was why the various large organizations had never thought of clearing out the Land of 100 Rivers, because it was completely worthless. It was better to leave it to its own devices. After slowly landing at the entrance, Xiao Chun walked towards the end of the valley. As soon as he entered the valley, Xiao Chun discovered that a mysterious energy had enveloped his body. Afterwards, Xiao Chun tried and discovered that he was indeed unable to fly. After walking for less than 100 meters, Xiao Chun saw corpses hanging from the cliffs on both sides of the valley. Some were only bones left, while others still had flesh and blood, but they had all rotted away. The cliffs on both sides were covered with corpses, extending all the way into the depths of the valley. With just a glance, there were probably hundreds of thousands of corpses. With so many corpses hanging upside down in the air, it gave off an extremely eerie feeling. However, Xiao Chun did not change his expression at all. He was no longer a young and inexperienced child. Although the scene made Xiao Chun feel slightly uncomfortable, that was all. After all, Xiao Chun had experienced slaughter over the years, which was no less than the corpses in front of him. As such, just these corpses alone were not enough to shock Xiao Chun. There was no one in charge of guarding the entrance. Thinking about it, the Land of 100 Rivers was an abandoned place. There was no value in guarding it. Just come if you want to. After about a quarter of an hour, Xiao Chun passed through the valley and successfully entered the land of 100 rivers. After passing through the valley, Xiao Chun's vision suddenly became clear. What seemed to be an endless plain appeared in front of Xiao Chun, but it was tightly surrounded by hundreds of towering mountains. It was really a prison. Other than this valley, it was probably really difficult for the people in the land of 100 rivers to leave this place. It was like a sealed world, but at the same time, the spiritual energy here was extremely thin. It was even worse than the Tiantian continent in the North Star realm. Compared to the overall cultivation environment in the Central world, the land of 100 rivers was indeed worthless. The spiritual energy here was at least 100 times thinner than the outside world. Think about it. In a place with such thin spiritual energy, even if one had a heaven-defying aptitude, it would be difficult to achieve anything. It was no wonder that the people of the major forces were not interested in the land of 100 rivers. If it was not necessary, they would definitely not enter. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1348. The lack of spiritual energy caused the entire land of 100 rivers to appear extremely desolate. The ground had already dried up and cracked inch by inch. Although there were some scattered lawns, the grass was all yellow and looked like it was on the verge of death. Looking at the plains in front of him, Xiao Chun knew that this was the land of 100 rivers, and the sky sunflower was also located in this remote area. According to Zhou Yunzheng, there were a total of 5 major cities in the land of 100 rivers. These cities were built by the major factions living in the land of 100 rivers. The best way to find the sky sunflower in the shortest time was naturally to go to the 5 major cities to inquire about it. The sky sunflower was a saint-grade spiritual herb, so it was only natural that there would not be many of them. Furthermore, the sky sunflower had a habit of only being plucked when it bloomed. It bloomed once every 5 years, and each time, the sky sunflower would only bloom for 5 days. This meant that there were only 5 days to pick the sky sunflower. If one missed it, they would have to wait for another 5 years. The people in the land of 100 rivers naturally knew about the preciousness of the sky sunflower. Therefore, every time a sky sunflower appeared, the news would quickly spread throughout the land of 100 rivers. This was the opportunity for Xiao Chun to find the sky sunflower. Although he might face many competitors, it was still better than searching aimlessly by himself. Therefore, after careful consideration, Xiao Chun quickly decided to listen to Zhou Yunjing's suggestion and go to the 5 major cities to see if he could find any information about the sky sunflower. Obtaining the sky sunflower in the land of 100 rivers was not an easy task. Not only was it extremely difficult to find the sky sunflower, but it was also because every time the sky sunflower appeared, there would be many people who lived in the land of 100 rivers fighting over it. Naturally, a chaotic battle was inevitable. Of course, there was also good news in the land of 100 rivers. It was certain that the strongest person in the land of 100 rivers was only at the saint realm, and there were not many of them. The strongest was a saint. Thinking about it, how could a quasi-saint come to a place like the land of 100 rivers? Moreover, even the saints who lived in the land of 100 rivers had no choice but to enter the land of 100 rivers because they were unable to continue living in the outside world. Otherwise, they wouldn't be willing to live in such a damnable place and be unable to advance in their entire lives. Xiao Chun wasn't too afraid of sage experts with his current cultivation. Xiao Chun was confident that he could kill an ordinary sage expert in a one-on-one fight. However, his cultivation was limited to those below the sage great perfection realm. Xiao Chun wouldn't be a match for a sage expert above the sage great perfection realm. However, even if he couldn't counterattack, fleeing wasn't a problem at all. It was even to the extent that even if 2 or 3 saints besieged him, Xiao Chun would definitely have a very good chance of escaping if he wanted to. This was the only good news for Xiao Chun. At the very least, so long as he kept a low profile in the land of 100 rivers and didn't offend too many people, then there shouldn't be any problems in terms of safety. Of course, such a situation was limited to normal circumstances. Moreover, The development of the matter this time was clearly impossible for it to develop according to Xiao Qin's expectations. After all, this was a trap set up by the Bai clan. The 7 saints of the Bai clan, 100 half-saints, and Dao Emperor realm experts of the Bai clan had arrived at the land of 100 Rivers before Xiao Chun, and they'd done so for the sake of encircling and killing Xiao Chun. Just as Xiao Chun arrived at the land of 100 Rivers and was about to look for a city to enter, in one of the 5 major cities, a city called Feng City. Tribute City was controlled by a gang called the Heaven Tribute Gang. Even though there were many other gangs in the city, the Heaven Tribute Gang was absolutely worthy of being called the overlord of Tribute City. Because the Heaven Tribute Gang had saints, and it wasn't just a single one. There were 3 of them. The Heaven Tribute Gang's strength was absolutely ranked in the top 5 throughout the land of 100 Rivers. At this moment, the 3 saints of the Heaven Tribute Gang and the 7 saints of the Bai clan were gathered in the front hall of the Heaven Tribute Gang's headquarters in Tribute City. Yes, as soon as the Bai clan arrived at the land of 100 Rivers, they directly entered Tribute City and quickly reached an agreement with the Heaven Tribute Gang. The Heaven Tribute Gang spies would search for Xiao Qin's whereabouts, and the Bai clan would give the Heaven Tribute Gang a huge amount of compensation. The Heaven Tribute Gang naturally had no reason to refuse such an agreement, so they'd agreed in a very straightforward manner. At this moment, the saints from both sides were gathered here, and the master of the Heaven Tribute Gang, Lin Tianfeng, smiled as he gazed at the 7 saints of the Bai clan. Everyone, we've already found Xiao Qin's whereabouts. With the Heaven Tribute Gang's influence in the land of 100 Rivers, Xiao Chun naturally caught their attention as soon as he entered the land of 100 Rivers. At the same time, the news had been sent back as soon as possible. Upon hearing Lin Tianfeng's words, the leader of the Bai clan saints asked in a deep voice, "Where is he?" The 7 of them had come prepared to die. If they killed Xiao Chun, they would die without a doubt, so they were already mentally prepared. Therefore, after hearing about Xiao Qin's whereabouts, the 7 saints of the Bai clan asked anxiously. As long as they killed Xiao Chun, their descendants would become direct disciples of the Bai clan and enjoy the treatment of direct disciples. This was what they valued the most. However, in the face of the Bai clan's anxiety, Lin Tianfeng said unhurriedly, of course we have people following him, but we've already agreed." Lin Tianfeng didn't immediately reveal Xiao Qin's whereabouts to the Bai clan. He rubbed his hands together, and it was apparent that he was asking for money from the Bai clan. The cooperation between the 2 sides was based on benefits. How could an old fox like Lin Tianfeng reveal the slightest clue before he obtained any benefits? This was the usual method of an old fox like Lin Tianfeng, who would not act until he saw the hare. Upon seeing Lin Tianfeng's reaction, the 7 saints of the Bai clan naturally knew what he meant. Immediately, the leader tossed a space ring to Lin Tianfeng and said in an ice-cold voice, "You can speak now, right?" Lin Tianfeng ignored the attitude of the Bai family saint. After receiving the space ring, he first checked the contents of the space ring. After confirming that the Bai family hadn't embezzled anything, Lin Tianfeng said with a smile again, "Of course, Xiao Chun has just entered the land of 100 Rivers and is rushing toward Ming City. My men are still following him. When do you intend to take action? I'll get someone to lead you there. Let's set off now," the leader of the Bai clan said. "Okay." Seeing this, Lin Tianfeng simply nodded in response. Then, he ordered a member of the Celestial Tribute faction to lead the Bai family to intercept and kill Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun didn't know that the Bai clan would make a move so suddenly. However, he had already discovered that he was being followed. After all, the Celestial Association's member was only a half-step saint, and he couldn't hide his cultivation level from Xiao Chun for long. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1349. The Celestial Tribute Association looked down on him too much. They had only sent a half-saint to follow him. How could a half-saint not be exposed when he was around Xiao Chun? Therefore, Xiao Chun quickly discovered the half-saint. Of course, it would be wrong to say that the Celestial Tribute Association looked down on him. It wasn't that they didn't want to send a saint to follow Xiao Chun, but they had no choice. There were very few saints in the land of 100 Rivers. As one of the strongest factions in the land of 100 Rivers, the Celestial Tribute Association only had 3 saints. As a result, how could they send a saint to follow Xiao Chun? Therefore, sending a half-saint to follow Xiao Chun was already the limit of the Celestial Tribute Association. Moreover, it wasn't the Celestial Tribute Association that wanted to kill Xiao Chun, but the Bai family. Naturally, they couldn't send a saint. Xiao Chun calmly continued towards Ming City. This was Zhou Yunjing's suggestion to Xiao Chun. Because the leader of the Ming Zheng gang, which was in charge of Ming City, was related to Zhou Yunzheng, Xiao Chun could ask the leader of the Ming Zheng gang for information about the Heaven Sunflower if he went to Ming City. Nothing out of the ordinary happened along the way. When Xiao Chun arrived at a stone forest, a cold smile appeared on Xiao Chun's face. His figure quickly disappeared into the stone forest. Although it was called a stone forest, it was actually formed by numerous boulders gathered together. However, there were so many of them that it seemed like a dense forest of boulders. As Xiao Chun walked through the stone forest, a black-clothed middle-aged man appeared outside the stone forest a short while after he entered. The middle-aged man frowned slightly as he looked at the stone forest in front of him. Then, he followed Xiao Chun into the stone forest. He was surrounded by boulders that were dozens of meters tall. The man in black completely lost track of Xiao Chun. He couldn't even sense his aura. He anxiously searched for Xiao Chun, but to no avail. Anger flashed in the man's eyes. Damn it, where did that brat go? Just as the black-clothed man was at a loss, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Are you looking for me? The sudden voice startled the man. He turned around abruptly, and at the same time his body involuntarily retreated. After putting some distance between him and Xiao Chun, the black-robed man could not help but exclaim in shock. Xiao Chun! The man who suddenly appeared behind him was naturally Xiao Chun. Upon hearing that the man actually called out his name, Xiao Chun's eyes glinted. He initially thought that the man was only following him to kill and rob him. After all, it was common to kill and rob in the land of 100 Rivers. But now, it seemed that things weren't that simple. If it was just killing and robbing, then how did this man know his name? This was Xiao Chun's first time in the land of 100 Rivers. He didn't know anyone here. With doubts in his mind, Xiao Chun's gaze gradually turned cold. He approached the man in black and asked, "Who are you? How do you know my name?" The man in black had no intention of answering Xiao Chun's question. He just gritted his teeth and thought of a countermeasure. He knew that Xiao Chun was a chosen on the holy rankings. Therefore, even though he was a half-saint expert, he still had no intention of fighting with Xiao Chun. What a joke. Even a saint expert wouldn't be able to win against a chosen on the holy rankings, let alone a half-saint expert. It wasn't until this moment that the man in black realized that Xiao Chun had already discovered him. It was just that Xiao Chun hadn't said anything. Xiao Chun had entered the stone forest just to lure him out. Fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead as he continued to retreat. Looking at the change in the man's expression, Xiao Chun was even more certain of his guess. There was definitely something wrong with the man in black. You don't want to say? Very well, then let me see how tough your bones are. Everything was strange. Xiao Chun didn't hesitate any longer. As soon as he finished speaking, he chose to attack. The sword domain instantly broke out of his body and enveloped the man in black. Being enveloped by the sword domain, the man in black's strength was instantly suppressed by almost 40%. At the same time, the sharp sword chi within the sword domain roared and attacked the man in black from all directions. His cultivation was half a realm higher than Xiao Chun's. But so what? A half-saint expert was nothing in front of Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun moved and pointed his finger. He instantly used the fish intestine sword finger and pierced through the man's abdomen. It did not take Xiao Chun long to subdue the middle-aged man and cripple his cultivation within a quarter of an hour. Xiao Chun then stepped on the man's chest and asked again, "What about you? Speak. Who are you? Why are you following me?" He asked the man in black again. However, the man in black still kept his mouth shut. Seeing this, Xiao Chun didn't waste any more time. With a thought, the dustless sword instantly appeared in his hand. With a flick of his hand, the man in black's leg tendons were severed. First it was his left foot, then his right foot, and then his hands. The man in black couldn't help but cry out in pain. In the end, he spoke weakly. I'll say, I'm from the Celestial Sect. The sect leader made a deal with some people 2 days ago. He wanted me to keep an eye on your whereabouts, so I've been waiting for you at the entrance. When I saw you today, I sent the news back. Since then, I've been following you. The man in black didn't dare to hold back and spoke truthfully. Hearing this, Xiao Chan frowned slightly. Who made a deal with your sect leader? I don't know. The sect leader didn't tell me, said the man in black. The man in black only knew to keep an eye on Xiao Chen's whereabouts, but he didn't know the identity of these people. Lin Tianfeng had never mentioned these things, so the man in black was only following orders. Seeing that the man in black really didn't know the identity of the other party, Xiao Chun didn't continue to ask. However, he was already a little wary. It seemed that this trip to the 100 Rivers lands wasn't so simple. Thinking of this, Xiao Chun didn't hesitate any longer. He directly ended the man's life with a single slash of his sword. Then, he left the stone forest and hurried towards Ming City. Less than 10 minutes after Xiao Chun left, 7 saints from the Bai clan and a half-step saint from the Celestial Sect arrived at the stone forest. They found the man in black's corpse here, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1350. The black-clothed man who was in charge of following Xiao Chun had been killed, and the 7 saints of the Bai clan had slightly unsightly expressions on their faces. The saint in the lead even spoke coldly. Looks like we've been discovered. Where's the path to Ming City? Let's catch up as soon as possible. Since they'd been discovered, then there was no need to continue acting sneakily. Moreover, Xiao Chan was definitely on the way to Ming City, so they had to stop him before he entered the city. They knew that Ming City wasn't within the territory of the Heaven Worship Gang, so it would be quite difficult to deal with once Xiao Chun entered Ming City. After all, the various gangs in the 100 Creeks region wouldn't obey the Bai clan's orders. Moreover, Ming City was under the control of the Ming Zheng Gang, so even the Heaven Worship Gang wouldn't be able to do anything to it. So, the best opportunity to kill Xiao Chan was to kill him before he entered Ming City. When he heard the saint from the Bai clan, the half-saint from the Heaven Worship Gang, who'd come along naturally, told the 7 of them the path to Ming City. The leader of the Bai clan spoke when he heard that. Stay here and lead the others over. The 7 of us will go ahead and stop Xiao Chun. The 7 of them were at the saint realm, so they were much faster than half-saints and Dao Emperors. So, they didn't have any time to waste. So, the 7 saints of the Bai clan intended to go ahead first. As for the other 100 half-saints and Dao Emperors of the Bai clan, they would follow closely behind them. Something worth mentioning was that the group the Bai clan had dispatched to kill Xiao Chun had concealed their identities a long time ago, and the Bai clan had destroyed all connections between them and the Bai clan. It could be said that the identities of these 107 saints of the Bai clan had ceased to exist since the moment they stepped foot into the 100 Creeks region. They'd done this so that the Heavenly Yin sect and Yang sect would investigate the Bai clan. With that, the 7 saints of the Bai clan disappeared from where they were and sped towards Ming City. The half-saint from the Celestial Worship faction led the other 100 Bai clan experts as well. Until now, Xiao Chun still did not know that the Bai family wanted to kill him. However, after the incident with the black-clothed man, Xiao Chun realized that something was wrong. It seemed that this mission was not as simple as it seemed. Xiao Chun could vaguely sense a hint of a conspiracy. Just as the 7 saints of the Bai family had thought, Xiao Chun was indeed hurrying towards Ming City. Xiao Chun had been very careful along the way, but after killing the man in black, Xiao Chun discovered that no one was following him. It seemed like they had only sent one person to follow him. Just as Xiao Chun was about to reach Ming City and was about to pass through a dense forest, he suddenly sensed 7 terrifying auras coming at him at high speed, continuously attacking him. Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly when he sensed the 7 presences. He murmured softly Saints. The 7 presences definitely came from saints. 7 saints were traveling together, and from the looks of it, they were heading straight for him. Xiao Qin's guess was correct. In just a few seconds after the 7 presences appeared, 7 figures appeared in front of Xiao Qin and blocked his path. The 7 of them all wore loose black robes. When they saw Xiao Qin, killing intent erupted from their eyes without holding back at all. Xiao Qin didn't need to say anything. He instantly understood that the 7 saints' target was him. Moreover, they wanted to kill him. They knew that he was a chosen on the saint rankings, but they still dared to attack him. Xiao Qin was sure that the 7 saints were probably death servants. They were already prepared to die. The 7 of them were naturally the 7 saints from Bai clan. However, Xiao Qin clearly didn't know their identities, and they didn't give Xiao Qin any chance. The leader of the 7 shouted coldly, "Die!" As soon as he finished speaking, the 7 saints launched an attack at the same time, surrounding Xiao Qin and trying to kill him. The 7 saints attacked at the same time, and the terrifying pressure instantly engulfed the entire sky. They actually sent out 7 saints just to kill him. How generous! Obviously, it was impossible for him to be a match for 7 saints. Xiao Qin wasn't afraid at all if he only faced 1 saint. Even if he faced 2 or 3 saints, Xiao Qin could still retreat calmly. However, his life was hanging by a thread when facing 7 saints at the same time. However, Xiao Qin didn't intend to give up without a fight. In the face of the 7 saints' attacks, Xiao Qin instantly activated the law of gravity. At the same time, he moved his feet and quickly dodged the 7 saints' attacks. There was a difference of an entire realm in cultivation. As a result, although the law of gravity could suppress the power of the 7 saints, the effect was extremely limited. The suppression of the law of gravity was directly related to one's cultivation. With Xiao Qin's current cultivation, the law of gravity could only suppress saints below the perfection saint stage at most. Fortunately, the 7 saints' cultivation was below the perfection saint stage, and the strongest was only at the greater saint stage. Even so, Xiao Qin didn't have any chance of winning. Therefore, after dodging the first round of attacks from the 7 saints, Xiao Qin's first choice was to turn around and retreat. He headed straight for the dense forest. There was definitely no way to escape in an open area. However, they were in a dense forest now, which gave Xiao Qin a space to hide. Seeing that Xiao Qin was about to rush into the dense forest, the leading saint from the Bai family immediately said coldly, "Stop him. Don't let him escape." Before setting off, Bai Mushuang had repeatedly instructed that they absolutely couldn't give Xiao Qin any chance to escape. They had to kill him as quickly as possible. Therefore, the 7 saints from a Bai family didn't have the slightest bit of carelessness when facing Xiao Qin. They all wanted to kill Xiao Qin as soon as possible. As the leader yelled, the other 6 saints attacked at the same time. One after another, they attacked Xiao Qin with all sorts of martial arts techniques. Those were the attacks of saints, and every attack was definitely not weak. If Xiao Qin took one of those attacks head-on, he would definitely be seriously injured. He rushed into the dense forest without stopping while dodging the attacks of the 6 saints behind him. His feet constantly moved, and his body moved left and right. After dodging 6 attacks in a row, the dense forest was right in front of him. As long as he rushed in, Xiao Qin would have a chance to deal with the 7 saints. However, when he was just a step away, the leading saint from the Bai family pointed his finger. Then a white light flashed by at lightning speed. This time, Xiao Qin couldn't dodge it. The white light directly penetrated Xiao Qin's chest, and a mouthful of blood immediately spurted out from Xiao Qin's mouth. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1351. Xiao Qin was eventually gravely injured by the continuous attacks of the 7 saints. However, Xiao Qin didn't stop after being hit. Instead, he used the force of the attack to dash into the dense forest. He knew clearly that he would die if he stopped. Xiao Qin, who had been on the verge of death countless times, knew his current situation very well. Seeing that Xiao Chun didn't stop at all after being hit by his finger, the leader of the Bai family didn't hesitate at all. He moved his feet and chased after Xiao Chun into the dense forest. In just a few seconds, the leader of the Bai family arrived at the dense forest. Apart from a pool of blood on the ground, there was no sign of Xiao Chun. The leader of the Bai family knitted his brows and said coldly, "That's impossible. Such serious injuries." The leader of the Bai family thought that Xiao Chun was definitely seriously injured after being hit by his finger. How did he manage to escape? He obviously didn't know that Xiao Chun possessed the tempered battle body. After being hit, Xiao Chun activated the tempered battle body, and the injury on his chest healed almost instantly. However, Xiao Chun consumed a lot of energy in doing so. Therefore, after dashing into the dense forest, Xiao Chun didn't dare to stop at all. Finally, he managed to dash into the dense forest and wasn't killed instantly. At this moment, Xiao Chun finally came to a stop after sprinting for hundreds of kilometers. His face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. Xiao Chun had indeed consumed a lot of energy after forcefully recovering from his injuries and sprinting for such a long distance. He calmed his somewhat rapid breathing. That was really thrilling, and he might have died on the spot if he wasn't careful. 7 saints besieging me. What a big move. After the previous encirclement, Xiao Chun was certain that this mission was definitely a trap. It was a trap to kill him, and the person who set this trap wanted to kill him directly in the land of 100 rivers. Furthermore, judging from the viciousness of the 7 saints, it was obvious that they did not intend to give him any chance of survival. Unfortunately, even though he'd confirmed that someone had set a trap to kill him, Xiao Chun was still unable to figure out who the person behind the scenes was. After all, those 7 saints from before hadn't revealed their identities. Xiao Chun leaned weakly against the tree. 7 saints. This was already beyond the limits of what he could deal with. Moreover, based on the current situation, the mastermind would definitely not rest until he killed Xiao Chun. As a result, Xiao Chun was afraid that he wouldn't even be able to leave the land of 100 rivers. The exit must have been blocked. It seemed that he could only send a message back to ask for reinforcements. Thinking of this, Xiao Chun did not hesitate. He immediately took out a voice transmission talisman from the storage ring and prepared to send the matter here to the Sky Yin-Yang sect. However, just as Xiao Chun was about to send a voice transmission, the voice transmission talisman spontaneously combusted. The voice transmission talisman didn't work. Seeing this, Xiao Chun frowned and muttered softly with an ugly expression. Damn it, the sealing talisman formation. The voice transmission talisman couldn't be used. In this case, the 7 saints must have set up a sealing talisman formation around him. The sealing talisman formation only had one function, and that was to seal off an area and directly cut off all connections between the area and the outside world. Once the sealing talisman formation was set up, all the voice transmission talismans in the area would lose their function and would not be able to send messages out at all. It wasn't a high-level talisman formation, but it was very practical. He had forgotten that these fellows could also set up sealing array glyphs. However, from this point, the person behind the scenes was also quite well prepared. It seemed that this operation had been carefully planned. Now that the voice transmission talisman was useless, he let out a sigh of relief. Being enveloped by the sealing talisman formation, if he continued to stay in this dense forest, he would undoubtedly be waiting for death. In the end, he would only be a turtle in a jar. The only way to break out now was to find a way to break out of the encirclement and break out of the range of the sealing talisman formation. Then, he could use the voice transmission talisman to contact the Sky Yin-Yang sect. As long as he could hold on until the experts of the Sky Yin-Yang sect arrived, the crisis would naturally be resolved. According to Xiao Chen's idea, the sealing talisman formation would not be too large. At most, it would cover this dense forest. In other words, as long as he could successfully break out of this dense forest, he would be able to ask for help from the Sky Yin-Yang sect. However, it was easier said than done. It was impossible to succeed. There were 7 saints, and who knew if there were others? Just as Xiao Chun was thinking of countermeasure, The 7 saints of the Bai family had indeed set up sealing talisman formations around the dense forest. Their goal was naturally to prevent Shao Chun from contacting the Sky Yin-Yang sect. After all, the ambush had been exposed. As long as Shao Chun was not stupid, he would definitely ask for help from the Sky Yin-Yang sect. The Bai family would definitely not give Shao Chun the chance to do so. The sealing talisman formation had been successfully set up. As such, the next step was to find a way to find Shao Chun and kill him. The battle had dragged on for so long, and the other 100 experts of the Bai family had arrived by now. At this moment, the leading expert of the Bai family said, "Shao Chun is hiding in this forest. The 7 of us will be in charge of locking down the entire forest. All of you enter the forest and search for Shao Chun. Once you find him, there's no need to fight him. Send the signal as soon as possible, and we'll rush over immediately." He ordered the 100 half-saints and Dao emperors of the Bai family to enter the forest and search for Shao Chun. As for the 7 saints, they would remain outside the forest and be in charge of locking down the forest to prevent Shao Chun from breaking out. The voice-transmitting talisman was useless because of the sealing charm matrix. However, ordinary communication tools, such as signal flares, could still be used. Therefore, after entering the forest, they sent out a signal as soon as they found Shao Chun. The 100 experts of the Bai family immediately nodded when they heard the leading saint. After that, they split into 20 groups of 5 and entered the forest. As for the 7 saints, they stood guard outside the forest and were on guard against Shao Chun at all times. The Bai family wanted to surround Shao Chun and kill him on the spot. At this moment, Shao Chun had found a secluded place and was hoping to make the best use of his time to recover his spirit energy. The current situation was very bad indeed. However, no matter what, his strength was the most fundamental form of protection. So, Shao Chun wanted to recover as soon as possible. Only then would he be able to deal with the various situations and dangers that might arise. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 1352. He knew that someone would enter this forest to search for him sooner or later, so Shao Chun didn't dare waste any time. By relying on the assistance of medicinal pills and the formidable strength of his tempered combat body, Shao Chun had almost recovered in merely an hour. Even though he couldn't be considered to have recovered to his peak state, he couldn't be bothered about all of that now. Shao Chun stood up and spat out a mouthful of foul air, while a wisp of icy coldness flashed through his eyes. He'd already made the decision to break out of the encirclement. Breaking out of the encirclement was his only choice. He would die sooner or later if he stayed in this forest, so he might as well risk it all. Right when Shao Chun was thinking like this, 5 faint auras arrived intermittently from his left. These 5 auras were very weak, and he couldn't sense them clearly. Obviously, someone was intentionally suppressing their auras with all their might. It was Shao Chun's senses that were extremely sharp that allowed him to capture these auras. When he sensed these 5 auras, Shao Chun's figure flashed, and he silently hid behind a pile of weeds at the side. In terms of ability to conceal his aura, Shao Chun didn't dare say that he was at the top, but he absolutely surpassed 99% of the cultivators. If Shao Chun intentionally concealed his aura, then ordinary cultivators would be utterly unable to notice him at all. Shao Chun waited patiently for the arrival of these 5 people. Not long after, about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the 5 figures finally appeared in front of him. Just like the 7 saints from before, these 5 people wore black robes as well. However, their cultivations weren't very high. The person in the lead was a half-saint, while the other 4 were at the Dao Emperor realm. Such a small group of 5 was naturally not dangerous to Shao Chun, but Shao Chun didn't act rashly. After all, who knew if there were any other groups in the surroundings? It wouldn't be good to act rashly and alert them. Shao Chun waited patiently for the 5 of them to ceaselessly approach him, and he only chose to make a move when they were less than 10 meters away from him. It wasn't an arena battle now, so he couldn't hold back at all. So, Shao Chun went all out as soon as he attacked. The sword domain and laws of gravity erupted at the same time, and these 2 forces instantly enveloped the 5 of them. The dual suppression of the laws of gravity and the sword domain caused their expressions to turn grim at the first possible moment. The sudden appearance of the sword domain and laws of gravity instantly suppressed almost half of their strength. Their expressions immediately changed when they faced such a sudden and unexpected event, and the half-sane in the lead even shouted at the first possible moment, "Release the signal." However, it was still too late. Right when this half-sane had just spoken and hadn't even finished speaking, Xiao Qin's figure had leaped out from the grass at the side. He held the dustless sword tightly in his hand as he casually slashed out with 4 strands of 9 sifting sword qi that shot directly towards the 4 Dao Emperor Realm cultivators. At the same time, he pointed forward with his left hand, and the fishbowl sword finger was instantly executed and shot directly towards a half-sane in the lead. At practically the exact same moment, Xiao Chun executed a martial Dao attack. 4 strands of 9 sips, sword qi, and a fish intestine sword finger. 5 attacks were launched at the same time, and they instantly struck the 5 of them. They didn't even have the time to let out shrill cries before this group of 5 was directly annihilated by Xiao Chun. It wasn't difficult for Xiao Chun to kill ordinary Dao Emperor Realm cultivators right now, and it was even to the extent that even half-saints wouldn't be able to resist Xiao Chun. Moreover, Xiao Chun had launched a surprise attack just now. At the same time, he was suppressed by the laws of gravity and the sword domain. So, it was naturally impossible for them to be a match for Xiao Chun when they weren't on guard. After he killed the 5 of them in one go, Xiao Chun directly arrived before them. After he searched their bodies, he noticed that they didn't have any personal belongings at all. Every single one of them only had a signal flare. Besides that, they didn't have anything else, and they didn't even have a spatial ring. They really are damn servants. They didn't even bring a spatial ring. Looks like they really are unafraid of death. These people were clearly aware that they wouldn't be able to return this time. Regardless of whether they were able to successfully kill Xiao Chun in the end, they would definitely die. So, they didn't even bring a spatial ring with them. He couldn't find anything that could prove their identities, nor did he have the slightest evidence. Even though Xiao Chun was slightly disappointed by this, he didn't stay and immediately left. He obtained 5 signal flares from the 5 of them. They might be useful, so Xiao Chun took them with him. Xiao Chun continued to move through the dense forest. All along the way, Xiao Chun was extremely cautious. A few hours passed, and the sky was gradually darkening. During this period of time, Xiao Chun killed another group of 5. Similarly, besides the signal flares, these 5 people had nothing else on them. There was no way to prove the identities of these people, so it was difficult to determine who the person behind the scenes was. The person behind the scenes hid very well and didn't leave behind any clues. Of course, this was probably also because of the Heavenly Yin-Yang sect. After all, if the Heavenly Yin-Yang sect found out, the person behind the scenes would definitely not have a good ending. Since he couldn't find any clues, Xiao Chun simply couldn't be bothered to think about it anymore. The most important thing now was to think of a way to save his life. If he lost his life, then wouldn't everything else be meaningless? Xiao Chun walked all the way from the depths of the dense forest to the periphery. Along the way, he had been deliberately avoiding the groups of black-clothed cultivators. These people were all here to search for him. Xiao Chun finally arrived at the edge of the dense forest. However, after secretly observing for a while, Xiao Chun discovered that the 7 saints from before hadn't entered the dense forest. Instead, they were standing guard outside the dense forest. As a result, no matter where he tried to break out of the encirclement, he would definitely be discovered by the 7 of them. At that time, the 7 of them would definitely surround him and kill him immediately. If he was surrounded and killed this time, he probably wouldn't be as lucky as last time. After all, the threat of 7 saints was no joke. Xiao Chun pondered for a while as he hid in the shadows. In the end, he was unable to come up with a surefire plan. In the end, Xiao Chun gritted his teeth and made a decision. Whatever, I can only risk it. With that, Xiao Chun withdrew a signal flare from his spatial ring. If he wanted to break out of the encirclement, the best method Xiao Chun could think of now was to draw the 7 saints away. The method was very simple, and it was naturally to use these signal flares. Every single one of the two groups of black-clothed cultivators that he'd killed earlier had a signal flare on them. As a result, there was no need to explain the use of the signal flare. They were definitely used to report to him after discovering him. With the sealing charm array in place, the voice-transmitting talisman was no longer of any use in this dense forest. The only way to communicate with each other was through ordinary signal flares. Therefore, Xiaoqun planned to use this method to lure away the 7 saints who had been guarding outside, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1353. It was indeed very bold to use the signal flare to lure the 7 saints away, but it was the only way Xiaoqun could think of at the moment. Xiaoqun did not know if he would succeed or not. Even he himself was not confident about it. While the Bai clan was trying to kill Xiaoqun in the forest, 4 middle-aged men were sitting together in a huge mansion in Ming City, not far away from where he was. This mansion was where the Mingzheng gang, which controlled Ming City, was located. Like the Fengtian gang, the Mingzheng gang was one of the strongest gangs in the land of 100 Rivers. It was even stronger than the Fengtian gang because there were 4 saints in the Mingzheng gang. Among them, the leader of the Mingzheng gang was in the Saint Realm Great Mastery. In the entire land of 100 Rivers, the leader of the Mingzheng gang could be ranked in the top 3. The middle-aged men sitting in the room were none other than the 4 saints of the Mingzheng gang. Among them, the middle-aged man sitting at the head of the table had a full beard. He looked rough, and his skin was dark and rough. At first glance, he looked like a farmer in the prime of his life. However, no one in the entire North River dared to underestimate this man, who looked like a strong farmer. This was because he was the leader of the Mingzheng gang, Zheng Ping. It was a very ordinary name and a very ordinary appearance. Of course, it was the same as Zheng Ping's life experience. If it wasn't for that incident, Zheng Ping's life would have been very simple. In fact, Zheng Ping was born very ordinary, and his cultivation talent was not high. It was only because of a great opportunity that he obtained the inheritance of an ancient almighty that he was able to break through the saint realm and become a saint. Before entering the land of 100 Rivers, Zheng Ping had assumed that he was a loose cultivator. However, he ended up getting married and having a child. His family lived in a small city. Relying on his cultivation base, Zheng Ping was able to live a comfortable life and was highly respected in the city. However, everything changed because of the arrival of this young master. This young master fancied Zheng Ping's wife. Not only did he force himself on her, he even killed her with his own hands in the end. As the saying goes, how could one not take revenge for the murder of one's wife? Zheng Ping was naturally like this as well. Unfortunately, that young master was a member of the Xianyuan clan, so how could Zheng Ping go against him? In the end, not only was he unable to kill his enemy, it even caused him to be utterly unable to continue living in the outside world. He could only leave this place far away and struggle on while at death's door. He thought about revenge at all times, but Zheng Ping knew that it was impossible for him to accomplish it by himself. It was even to the extent that even leaving the Valley of Rivers was a delusion. Because once he did, then Zheng Ping was very clearly aware that he would definitely suffer the endless pursuit of the Xianyuan clan. Before the Xianyuan clan, Zheng Ping was just an ant, and he simply couldn't be any weaker. He'd originally thought that he would just wait for death to arrive, but recently, Zheng Ping had received news that a group of mysterious figures were pursuing a young man who just entered the Valley of Rivers. Originally, such incidents were extremely common in the Valley of Rivers, so it wasn't surprising at all. However, the strange thing was that the strength of this group of mysterious figures was extremely terrifying. They were led by 7 saints, and they had 100 half-saints and Dao Emperor Realm experts under their command. Such a formidable force was clearly not the doing of a gang in the Valley of Rivers, because it was impossible for any gang in the Valley of Rivers to possess such a luxurious force of 7 saints at the same time. Obviously, this was the doing of an outside power. Moreover, They didn't hesitate to utilize such a luxurious force to besiege and kill a young man. This was even more incomprehensible. So, out of curiosity, Zheng Ping had ordered his subordinates to investigate this matter in detail. In the end, he'd found out through one of his spies in the heaven worship gang that the young man they were pursuing was called Xiao Chun. He was really Xiao Chun who'd killed Bai Chiron a few days ago and ascended to the 92nd position on the saint rankings. He was the holy disciple of the heavenly Yin sect on the saint rankings. Zheng Ping was shocked when he heard this, but it wasn't long before he fell into hesitation. There is no doubt that Xiao Chen's life was definitely hanging by a thread right now, because even if he was a holy disciple on the saint rankings, it was absolutely impossible for him to be a match for 7 saints. If Zheng Ping led the Mingjin gang to assist Xiao Chun right now, then so long as he was able to protect Xiao Chen's life, then wouldn't Xiao Chun owe him a huge favor? On the other hand, with Xiao Chen's identity, if Xiao Chun was willing to help Zheng Ping, then not only would all the members of the Mingjin gang be able to leave the Valley of Rivers, Zheng Ping would even be able to take revenge. After all, even though the Xinyuan clan was strong, the person who'd killed Zheng Ping's wife was merely an ordinary young master of the Xinyuan clan. Moreover, his natural talent in cultivation was extremely ordinary. He couldn't be considered to be a core disciple of the Xinyuan clan, let alone a holy disciple on the saint rankings. In this way, with Xiao Chen's ability, he would absolutely be able to take revenge for Zheng Ping if he really wanted to. For the sake of revenge, and for the sake of being able to leave the Valley of Rivers, Zheng Ping hesitated. That was why he'd gathered the other 3 saints to discuss this matter. He had already told his thoughts to the 3 people beside him, but after hearing his words, the 3 of them were still hesitant. Firstly, saving Xiao Chun was indeed a good thing, and they would definitely be able to obtain unexpected benefits. However, that was the best outcome. Once they failed, would the Mingjin gang be able to fend off the attacks of those mysterious people? After all, there were 7 true saints. If they acted against the Mingjin gang would definitely be unable to resist them. The risk was too great, and no one dared to make a rash decision. Seeing that the 3 of them had sunk into hesitation, the 4 people in the room fell into silence for a moment. The entire room was quiet, and the atmosphere became a little strange. In this strange atmosphere, after a long while, Zheng Ping suddenly slammed the table, stood up, and said, "Let's go. Brother, they say that riches come from danger. Are we going to stay in the Valley of Rivers forever? Perhaps our Mingjin gang will be annihilated if we act this time, but what if we succeed? Won't we be able to leave this damned place then? I think we can give it a try. After all, he's a chosen on the saint rankings. He's in the limelight right now. Compared to the rewards, I think this little bit of risk is worth the gamble." Zheng Ping finally made his decision. The other 3 saints pondered for a moment before making up their minds. "All right, we'll listen to you, big brother. But how are we going to save him? I'm afraid we can't fight head-on, right? There's no need to worry about that. I'm sure that Chosen Xiao Chun is definitely thinking of a way to contact the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect right now. So our goal isn't to defeat those mysterious people. We just need to stall for time until the experts of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect arrive. Everything will naturally be resolved then. We just need to stall for time, a day at most. I think that with our Mingjin gang strength, we should be able to succeed," Zheng Ping said loudly. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1354. For the sake of taking revenge for his wife, and for the sake of leaving the land of rivers, Zheng Ping had made his decision. He didn't want to miss such an opportunity that was placed before him, and he was willing to take a gamble. Zheng Ping was quite bold indeed. No wonder he was able to establish the Mingjin gang in the land of rivers. After all, his decision was very likely to cause the Mingjin gang to be annihilated. Of course, this was like a gamble. If he won, then Zheng Ping and everyone else in the Mingjin gang would soar into the sky. But if he lost, then the outcome was obvious. It could be said that Zheng Ping was using everything in the Mingjin gang as a gamble. However, Since he'd made his decision and the other three saints had agreed, Zheng Ping didn't hesitate any longer and immediately shouted in a low voice, "Inform all those who have reached the Tao Emperor realm to gather in 15 minutes. Then, we will set off to rescue Holy Son Shao Chun." No one had imagined that the Mingjin gang would actually take action at a time like this, nor had they imagined that Zheng Ping would actually be so insane to the point of not hesitating to use the entire Mingjin gang as a gamble. At this moment, Shao Chun was still unaware of the Mingjin gang's actions and Zheng Ping's decision. At this moment, he was hiding within the forest and waiting for the best opportunity. The veil of night grew deeper and deeper, and it was already past midnight. At this moment, Shao Chun seemed as if he'd completely fused into the darkness. His entire body didn't emanate even the slightest aura, and it was even to the extent that his breathing seemed to have stopped. From the beginning until the end, Shao Chun had been paying attention to the 7 saints outside the forest for over 2 hours. These 7 saints were the most threatening existences. As for the other half-saints and Tao emperors, to put it bluntly, Shao Chun was entirely capable of defeating them one by one if they weren't present. Even if he couldn't kill them, leaving would absolutely be as easy as flipping his hand. The greatest threat was still the 7 saints. However, Shao Chun was definitely unable to deal with them, so he could only send a message to the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. Time flowed by slowly. At this moment, Shao Chun was unable to sense any auras in the surroundings. In other words, the pairs of black-clothed cultivators who'd entered the forest to search earlier had already left this area and headed to other areas to search. The time had finally come. Without any hesitation, Shao Chun immediately pulled down the rope on the signal flare. In an instant, a signal flare soared into the sky, instantly illuminating the originally dark sky. As the signal flare rose into the sky, Shao Chun didn't dare to hesitate at all. He immediately rushed in another direction. Suddenly, a signal flare rose into the sky. The 7 saints who had been guarding the periphery of the dense forest were delighted. However, just as they were about to move, their leader said calmly, "The 5 of us will go. Old 6 and Old 7 will stay here." The leader was really cautious. Even though there was a signal flare in the sky, he still left 2 saints to guard the place. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for Old 6 and Old 7 to reply, the leader immediately led the other 4 saints and rushed in the direction of the signal flare. The movements of the 7 saints naturally couldn't escape Shao Chun's eyes. At this moment, they were sprinting along the predetermined route, while Shao Chun observed the movements of the 7 saints. When he saw that they'd actually left 2 saints to guard the place, Shao Chun's expression turned extremely ugly. The plan didn't succeed, but there was no other way now. There was no turning back. This was the best opportunity. If he couldn't break out of the encirclement this time and send the news back to the Taiyang sect, there would be even less of a chance in the future. Without any hesitation, nothing in this world was guaranteed. Even if the situation had changed, Shao Chun could only brace himself for now. 2 saints were much better than 7 saints. At least 5 of them had been successfully lured away by him. Thinking of this, Shao Chun also rushed out of the dense forest. At the same time, the 2 saints in charge of guarding Shao Chun immediately discovered Shao Chun's tracks. One of them immediately shouted, "Damn it, we've been tricked." As they spoke, their gazes fell on Shao Chun at the same time. At this moment, Shao Chun had already rushed out of the dense forest. At most, he would be able to rush out of the range of the sealing talisman array. At that time, he would be able to use the sound transmission talisman. The signal flare was sent by Shao Chun. The 2 saints immediately realized this. Without any time to think, they immediately rushed toward Shao Chun. However, there was a certain distance between them after all. It wasn't easy for them to catch up to Shao Chun. They watched helplessly as Shao Chun rushed out of the range of the sealing talisman array. At this moment, the 5 saints who had been lured away earlier also rushed out of the dense forest. When the leader saw that Shao Chun had already rushed out of the range of the sealing talisman array, he immediately shouted angrily, "Stop him! Don't let him use the sound transmission talisman." These words were directed at the two saints who were chasing after Shao Chun. Unfortunately, although the leaders shouted angrily, it was clearly too late to stop Shao Chun now. As soon as Shao Chun rushed out of the range of the ceiling talisman array, a ray of light flashed from his storage ring. Then, a brand new sound transmission talisman appeared in Shao Chun's hand. Seeing that Shao Chun had already taken out the sound transmission talisman, and that the sound transmission talisman was beginning to glow with a faint white light, it was obvious that he had already begun to transmit his sound transmission. Faced with this scene, the leader's face darkened. The veins on his forehead bulged as he cursed in his heart. Damn it. They had searched for Shao Chun for almost an entire night, but in the end, they still let Shao Chun successfully transmit his sound transmission. Was all their efforts going to be for naught? They were furious and terrified at the same time. They absolutely could not let Shao Chun succeed. Or rather, even if Shao Chun used the sound transmission talisman, they had to kill him before the experts of the heavenly Een solar sect arrived. Thinking of this, the leader sped up again. At the same time, the four saints behind him also sped up. For a moment, Shao Chun was running at the front in the dark night. Behind him, the seven saints split into two groups and chased closely behind. It sounded like a long time, but in reality, it was only a matter of a few breaths. The white light on the sound transmission talisman grew denser and denser. In the end, the white light turned into specks of stars and disappeared. The sound transmission was finally successful. Shao Chun finally succeeded in transmitting the message back to the heavenly Een solar sect. The content was very brief, only one sentence. Your life is in danger. Come to the land of 100 rivers quickly. It was a simple sentence, but Shao Chun believed that Chun-Ling would definitely understand what he meant. This sound transmission talisman was for Shao Chun to send to Chun-Ling. Seeing that the sound transmission talisman had successfully completed the transmission, the seven saints behind him all gritted their teeth. The leader even roared furiously. Chase after him. We must kill him. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1355. Shao Chun's request for help had been successfully sent back to the heavenly Yin Yang sect. The killing intent in the leader's heart grew even stronger when he saw this. He had to kill Shao Chun before the experts of the heavenly Yin Yang sect arrived. At this moment, the heavenly Yin Yang sect had definitely received the news, and it would take at least half a day to arrive at the land of 100 rivers from the heavenly Yin Yang sect if all the preparations were included. As a result, the leader of the Bai clan knew very well that they only had a day at most. If they couldn't kill Shao Chun within a day, then the operation would end in failure. At that time, all of them would have no choice but to commit suicide and die for nothing. Even though they would all die in the end, killing Shao Chun and failing were two completely different things. If they could kill Shao Chun and be killed by the will of the Heavenly Way in the end, then their juniors would be taken care of by the Bai clan. If they failed, then Bai Mushuan's promise from before would be invalid. It was even to the extent that their juniors would have to be killed to prevent the news from spreading and bringing disaster to the entire Bai clan. They had to kill Shao Chun. That was what the seven saints thought. At this moment, even though Shao Chun had heaved a sigh of relief, he still hadn't come into contact with danger. The request for help had been successfully sent out, but Shao Chun still had to persist during this period of time. He had to deal with these people until the experts of the heavenly Yin Yang sect arrived. Shao Chun didn't show any signs of slowing down at all. He and the seven saints chased each other madly through the night sky. At the same time, the half-saints and Dao emperors in the dense forest naturally charged out of the forest and chased after Shao Chun. However, with their cultivations, they were clearly unable to catch up to Shao Chun. However, the seven saints were constantly chasing after Shao Chun. Shao Chun still hadn't come into contact with danger, and it was already late at night in the heavenly Yin Yang sect. Chun-Ling was cultivating with his eyes closed when a voice transmission suddenly entered his ears. Your life is in danger. Come to the land of 100 rivers quickly. It was a short message. Chun-Ling's eyes snapped open when he heard that, and he couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Third brother, He knew that Xiao Chun had sent this message through the transmission talisman. He also knew that with Xiao Chen's personality, his life was definitely on the line for him to say something like that. He knew Xiao Chen's personality very well. Xiao Chen wouldn't exaggerate anything. So since Xiao Chen said that his life was in danger, there was no doubt that Xiao Zhao's life was on the line. Land of 100 Rivers. That mission, Chunling knew that Xiao Chun had gone to the Land of 100 Rivers, and the first thing he thought of was the mandatory mission issued by the Hall of Missions. He also realized that something was wrong, but now was not the time to think about it. He had to rescue Xiao Chun as soon as possible. Chunling immediately got up and strode out of the room, ready to find the upper echelons of the heavenly Yin solar sect. Chunling knew very well that if even Xiao Chen's life was on the line, they wouldn't be of much use even if they went. Therefore, he needed to borrow the power of the heavenly Yin solar sect. However, just as Chunling was about to leave the cave, he coincidentally bumped into Emperor Qing, who was hurriedly leaving. When Emperor Qing saw Chunling, he spoke first before Chunling could say anything. His face was filled with joy. "Brother Chunling, let me tell you a piece of good news. The ancestors have all come out of seclusion, and their cultivation bases have all broken through to the greater mastery of the quasi-saint stage." Haha! Xiao Sheng and the others had all come out of seclusion, and their cultivation bases had all broken through to the greater mastery of the quasi-saint stage. Chunling, who was originally in a bad mood, couldn't help but be delighted when he heard this. He didn't expect Xiao Sheng and the others to come out of seclusion at this time. Their luck was really heaven-defying. Originally, Chunling planned to ask the experts of the heavenly Yin solar sect for help. However, this would inevitably delay some time. Now that Xiao Sheng and the others had come out of seclusion and told him about the matter, it'd save a lot of time. He could let the 4 of them go to the 100 Rivers first, and then let the experts of the heavenly Yin solar sect go. This way, it would undoubtedly save a lot of time. If they set off now, they would definitely be able to reach the 100 Rivers within 6 hours. This was the advantage of Xiao Sheng and the others coming out of seclusion. They didn't need to delay time like the heavenly Yin solar sect and could set off immediately. Delighted, Chunling couldn't care less about anything else and asked the Cyan Emperor anxiously, "Where are the ancestors now?" Hearing this, the Cyan Emperor also noticed Chunling's abnormality. However, before he could ask further, Chunling urged him. Finally, the Cyan Emperor said, "They're in Xiao Chen's cave residence." Knowing that Xiao Sheng and the others were in Xiao Chen's cave residence, Chunling didn't say a word. His figure moved and disappeared on the spot. Seeing this, the Cyan Emperor was even more confused. After being stunned for a moment, he quickly chased after him. He rushed all the way to Xiao Chen's cave residence. In the front hall, Chunling saw Xiao Sheng and the others. At the same time, Qin Shu and the other 3 women, as well as Chun Yu and Bai Yi, were all present. Seeing Chunling striding over, Chun Yu was originally smiling and said, "Chunling, you're here." He originally wanted to say that Chunling was late, but before Chun Yu could finish his sentence, Chunling had already strode over to Xiao Sheng and the others. At the same time, sensing Chunling's abnormality, everyone looked at Chunling curiously. Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Sheng smiled and asked, "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" "Patriarch, Xiao Chun is in danger. He is in the land of 100 Rivers." Xiao Chun was in danger and had already sent a message asking for help. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed, especially Qin Shu and the other 3 women, who immediately stood up. Chunling's words instantly made the atmosphere tense. After being slightly stunned, Xiao Sheng, who was sitting on the main seat, was the first to recover from his shock. "The land of 100 Rivers? Randang, Binglian, Mengjia. The 4 of us will set off immediately. Chunling, go ahead and inform the Yin and Yang sect, and ask them to send experts. The 4 of us will set off first." Xiao Sheng's thoughts coincided with Chunling's. The most important thing now was time. Therefore, Xiao Sheng and the other 3 headed towards the 100 Rivers land first. This was the best choice. When he heard Xiao Sheng's words, Chunling nodded without hesitation. Okay, I'll go now. After saying that, Chunling turned around and left. Xiao Sheng and the other three didn't have time to chat with the others. They only said to Qin Shru and the other three women, "Wait for us in the yin and yang sect. Don't go anywhere." After saying that, without waiting for the four women to reply, Xiao Sheng and the other three disappeared on the spot and flew toward the teleportation array in the yin and yang sect. Seeking collection, monthly votes, recommendation. Chapter 1356. Xiao Sheng's group of four rushed to the land of 100 rivers overnight, and Qinling immediately reported the matter to the higher-ups of the Taiyang sect. Of course, Chunling naturally couldn't see Yin Yangzi, so he could only pass on the message through the elders. That was why he said it would take time. He responded immediately. At the same time, Xiao Chun and the 7 saints of the Bai family were chasing each other in the night. Fortunately, there was no way to fly in the land of 100 rivers, and there was no way to tear the void. Otherwise, Xiao Chun would have been caught long ago. Even so, the gap between the two sides was constantly narrowing. After all, there was a gap in cultivation, so Xiao Chun couldn't compare with the saints in terms of speed or spiritual power. In the long run, they would definitely catch up. Xiao Chun thought that he could only think of a way to stall for time. He had to hold on until the experts of the Taiyang sect arrived. Xiao Chun could feel that the 7 auras behind him were getting closer and closer. Their leader, in particular, was the one with the highest cultivation. He had reached the Saint Realm Great Mastery, so his speed was naturally the fastest. It could be said that he was taking the lead and was constantly approaching Xiao Chun. Seeing that the distance was getting closer and closer, Xiao Chun directly took out several talismans from his storage ring. It was obviously impossible to fight head-on. Xiao Chun absolutely had no chance of winning against 7 saints. The only thing he could do now was to stall for time. Without the slightest hesitation, Xiao Chun directly shot 5 talismans at the person behind him at the same time. The 5 talismans were all at the saint level, but in the face of the attack, the saint in the lead didn't have the slightest intention of dodging. Obviously, he planned to take the 5 talismans head-on. Even though he was a saint, he had to take 5 saint-level talismans head-on. However, he couldn't care less about that now. They were already destined to compete, so it didn't matter even if they had talismans. They had to kill Xiao Chun before the Taiyang sect did. They had already disregarded life and death. With a loud rumble, the 5 talismans exploded, and the saint in the lead didn't dodge the attack. The power of the 5 talismans exploding at the same time was obviously not weaker than the attack of a saint. Sensing the terrifying aftermath from behind, Xiao Chun didn't have time to breathe a sigh of relief before the saint in the lead rushed out of the smoke. His clothes were tattered, and at the same time, his aura had become somewhat weak. Obviously, the 5 talismans had caused him quite a bit of damage. Even so, in order to prevent Xiao Chun from escaping, the saint in the lead still chose to take the attack head-on without hesitation. It was also because of this choice that Xiao Chun couldn't use the 5 talismans to put any distance between them. He was determined to kill Xiao Chun before the Taiyang sect. He approached Xiao Chun step by step and shouted coldly, "Xiao Chun, you can't escape. Today is the day you die." His words were filled with killing intent. Hearing this, Xiao Chun frowned. These people were all desperados and didn't care about their own lives at all. He had no intention of replying. What a joke. This was a life and death chase. Xiao Chun wasn't in the mood to talk nonsense with this saint. Staying alive was the most important thing. He had already raised his speed to the limit. But even so, the saint in the lead still caught up to Xiao Chun 15 minutes later. Although he was quite injured, the saint in the lead blocked Xiao Chun's path and stared at Xiao Chun with murderous intent. At the same time, the other 6 saints arrived in an instant and surrounded Xiao Chun. After the previous incident, the 7 saints had clearly learned their lesson. This time, in order to prevent Xiao Chun from escaping again, the 7 of them directly sealed off all of Xiao Chun's escape routes, not giving him any chance to escape. He was completely surrounded. At this moment, A helpless expression appeared on Xiao Chen's face. He was still unable to escape. Now that he was surrounded, it would be extremely difficult for him to charge out. Since stepping onto the path of martial arts, this was the most dangerous situation Xiao Chen had ever faced. From the current situation, this was already a situation of certain death. Facing 7 saints, all of whom were death servants, Xiao Chen had no chance of survival at all. It could be said that he was already in a desperate situation, but after a moment of hesitation, Xiao Chen's dustless sword instantly appeared in his hand. Even though it was a situation of certain death, and he knew that he had no chance of winning, Xiao Chen still had no intention of surrendering. Even if he died, he would still stand. Seeing Xiao Chen draw out the dustless sword, the leading saint sneered, "Xiao Chen, do you think you still have a chance of survival today? Give up resisting, and I can give you a quick death." "Huh, if you want to fight, then let's fight. Why talk so much nonsense?" Xiao Chen sneered when he heard that. He had no intention of surrendering at all. When he heard Xiao Chen's answer, the leading saint's face sank, and then he shouted coldly, "Then don't blame us. Kill." There wasn't much time to waste, so the leading saint roared furiously and was the first to attack Xiao Chen. The other 6 saints didn't stand by idly when they saw that, and they all surrounded Xiao Chen. The attack of 7 saints was naturally terrifying. Looking at the 7 saints attacking from different directions, Xiao Chen showed a self-deprecating smile on his face. He then tightened his grip on the Wuchen's sword and murmured softly, "That's right. Looks like this is the only way. Since that's the case, then let's fight one last battle." As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura shot into the sky from Xiao Chen. At the same time, the sword domain and laws of gravity instantly swept out and enveloped all of them. This time, the enemy's plan could be said to be flawless, and even the Yin and Yang sects were unable to rescue him in time. Moreover, even until now, Xiao Chen still didn't know who was behind all of this. Who was it that didn't hesitate to pay such a painful price to kill him? After all, 7 saints, 100 half-saints, and Tao emperors. Such a force was completely sufficient to establish a formidable saint-rank sect. Using the strength equivalent to that of a saint-level sect just to kill him, this was a big deal. In the end, it seemed like he had taken the initiative. Right when Xiao Chen was prepared to go all out and fight to the death, a furious shout suddenly resounded from afar. "Holy Son Xiao Chen, Ming Zheng and Zheng Ping have come to lend you a hand." Along with this voice, Xiao Chen saw 4 figures dashing over swiftly from afar, and they were swiftly approaching him, begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 1357. These 4 figures were naturally Zheng Ping and the other 3 from the Mingzhen gang. They had sped all the way here from Ming City because they were worried that they wouldn't have enough time, so Zheng Ping and the other saints had arrived first. As for the other members of the Mingzhen gang, they had arrived later. They had thought that they were doomed, but who would have thought that Zheng Ping would lead the Mingzhen gang to suddenly charge in? Although Xiao Chen hadn't had any contact with the Mingzhen gang before, their sudden appearance undoubtedly gave Xiao Chen a glimmer of hope. Compared to Xiao Chen, the 7 saints from the Bai family were incomparably furious. They had thought that they were going to succeed, but who would have thought that such a situation would occur? Damn it, the Mingzhen gang has ruined our plans. The leader of the saints cursed coldly. He had naturally heard of the Mingzhen gang and knew that they were actually stronger than the Celestial Tribute gang. Now that the Mingzhen gang had suddenly intervened, the situation had spiraled out of control. Without giving the 7 saints from the Bai family much time to hesitate, Zheng Ping and the other 3 arrived in front of Xiao Chen in a few breaths of time. Zheng Ping took the initiative to bow. "Holy Son Xiao Chen, I am the leader of the Mingzhen gang, Zheng Ping. I heard that the Holy Sun was in danger, so I came to help." Zheng Ping didn't beat around the bush and spoke bluntly. Xiao Chen didn't have time to think about Zheng Ping's motives. He immediately replied with a smile, "You're too kind, Leader Zheng. Xiao Chen thanks you in advance." The appearance of Zheng Ping and the other 3 was indeed timely. While the 2 of them were talking, the leader of the Bai family, said coldly, "Ming Zhenggang, are you sure you want to get involved in this mess?" His words were filled with anger. Zheng Ping turned around and looked straight at the leader of the Bai family. He said calmly, "The Ming Zhenggang will definitely take care of this matter. No matter who you are, as long as the Ming Zhenggang is here today, you can harm the holy sun Shao Chun." Zheng Ping's words were filled with righteousness. Of course, it was also to leave a good impression on Shao Chun. After all, ever since the decision was made, Zheng Ping and the entire Ming Zhenggang have been tied to Shao Chun. They could either protect Shao Chun and achieve meteoric success, or they could die with Shao Chun. The leader of the Bai family gnashed his teeth when he saw that Zheng Ping wasn't backing down. They were about to succeed, but things had turned out to be so confusing. The Ming Zhenggang really didn't know what was good for them. Seeing that it was probably impossible to persuade Zheng Ping to give up, the leader of the Bai family made a prompt decision and called out coldly, "Since the Ming Zhenggang wants to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Kill." There was no way out no matter what. As a result, the leader of the Bai family had no intention of letting go even though the Ming Zhenggang had interfered. No matter what, they had to kill Shao Chun as long as he still had a breath left in him. With that, everyone began to engage in a chaotic battle. There were 7 saints from the Bai family, Zheng Ping's group, and Shao Chun. Zheng Ping directly fought the leader of the Bai family, while the other 3 saints from the Ming Zhenggang fought the other 3 saints from the Bai family as well. Zheng Ping's group of 4 shared the pressure of the 4 saints for Shao Chun. However, even then, Shao Chun still had to face the encirclement of the 3 remaining saints. The Bai family's target was clearly Shao Chun, so apart from the 4 saints who were being held back by Zheng Ping's group, the other 3 saints all targeted Shao Chun. The pressure was still great, but it was much better than before. Shao Chun could deal with the 3 saints. After all, Shao Chun's goal wasn't to defeat them, but to stall for time. Shao Chun fought the 3 saints with the dustless sword in hand. During the battle, Shao Chun didn't take the initiative to meet the 3 saints head-on. Instead, he adopted the strategy of using gentleness to overcome strength. He would dodge if he could, and only when he couldn't dodge would Shao Chun choose to meet the 3 saints head-on. The 3 saints did possess an absolute advantage in their encirclement against Shao Chun, but they didn't possess the ability to instantly crush Shao Chun. Especially Shao Chun's abnormal recovery ability, it caused them to be unable to speak of their suffering. The saints were in a chaotic battle, and it wasn't long before the remaining half-saints and Dao Emperor realm experts of the Bai family arrived as well. The saint who led the Bai family immediately shouted furiously when he saw this. "Kill! Surround and kill Shao Chun with all your might." At this moment, he was being held back by Zheng Ping and was completely unable to escape. So, he didn't hesitate to order the remaining saints of the Bai family to surround and kill Shao Chun with all their might. Even though half-saints and Dao emperors were practically no threat to Shao Chun, even ants could bite an elephant to death when there were enough of them. So, having one more person would give them a slight chance. However, right when the members of the Bai family were about to attack, the members of the Ming Zhenggang had arrived from another direction. Even though their cultivations weren't at the same level and their quality was far inferior to the Bai family, they were huge in number, and there were over 1,000 of them. Along with the arrival of the Ming Zhenggang, Zheng Ping didn't waste his breath and just shouted coldly, "Stop them!" Both sides entered into a chaotic battle. With the help of the Ming Zhenggang, the pressure on Shao Chun had been reduced greatly. Even though Shao Chun had fallen into a disadvantaged position by relying on the strength of the 100-tempered battle body, he was still bitterly holding on under the joint forces of the 3 saints. It was utterly impossible to kill Shao Chun in a short period of time. As the intense battle continued, the sky gradually brightened and the veil of night retreated, causing their gazes to descend onto the ground once more. After such a long period of intense battle, Shao Chun was still brimming with energy, and he didn't seem exhausted at all. In the face of Shao Chun's terrifying physical body, the 3 saints of the Bai family didn't know what to say. If it had been anyone else in such an intense battle, they would have definitely been seriously injured, if not completely injured. However, Xiao Chun was fighting 1 against 3. Even though he was on the defensive the entire time, Xiao Chun would quickly recover from the injuries inflicted by the 3 saints, and Xiao Chen's condition remained at peak condition the entire time. As the battle dragged on, the hearts of the Bai family grew heavier and heavier. The experts of the Heavenly Yin and Solar Sect loomed over the hearts of the Bai family members like a mountain that they couldn't ignore, and they were under immense pressure. They had long been desperate to kill Xiao Chun, but unfortunately, they hadn't been able to find an opportunity to do so. It was during this intense battle that, without any warning, 4 terrifying auras appeared. These 4 auras had clearly surpassed the Saint Realm and had reached the Quasi-Saint Realm. Damn it, how did they get here so quickly? Sensing the 4 powerful auras, the Bai family saint's face darkened, and his eyes were filled with resentment as he cursed in a deep voice. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1358. Everyone knew that there were no quasi-sage great venerables in the land of 100 Rivers. However, the sudden appearance of 4 quasi-sage great venerables auras meant that the experts of the Heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect had arrived. They didn't expect them to arrive so quickly. According to their estimation, it would take at least half a day for the experts of the Heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect to arrive at the land of 100 Rivers after receiving Xiao Chen's request for help. But now, only a little more than 8 hours had passed. This was simply too fast. The 4 quasi-saint great venerables auras rapidly approached. Then, Xiao Sheng and the other 3 appeared in front of everyone. In fact, Xiao Sheng and the other 3 had already entered the land of 100 Rivers more than 15 minutes ago, but it took them some time to find Xiao Chen's whereabouts. It was also because Xiao Sheng had sensed the aftermath of the battle here that the 4 of them rushed all the way here. They didn't expect to really find Xiao Chun. At a glance, they saw Xiao Chun fighting fiercely with 3 saints. Seeing that Xiao Chun was fine, Xiao Sheng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that they had made it in time. At the same time, with the appearance of Xiao Sheng and the other 3, Xiao Chun, Zheng Ping, and all the people of Mingjing Gang who were still alive felt relieved. It seemed that they had made the right bet. The experts of the Heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect had arrived, and there were 4 quasi-saint great venerables. With Xiao Sheng and the other 3 here, it was enough to sweep away the experts of the Bai family in front of them. Xiao Sheng's figure moved and immediately appeared in front of Xiao Chun. With a wave of his hand, a huge wave of spiritual energy broke out of his body and blasted the 3 saints who were besieging Xiao Chun away. There was no need to talk about the gap between quasi-saint great venerables and saints. The 3 saints were no match for Xiao Sheng at all and were seriously injured in one blow. Then, Xiao Sheng turned to look at Xiao Chun with a hint of joy in his eyes. "Boy, you really don't give people any peace of mind." There was a hint of reproach in his words, which was normal. After all, Xiao Chen's life was indeed hanging by a thread this time. If it weren't for Zheng Ping and Mingjing Gang's help, and Xiao Sheng and the others' timely arrival, Xiao Chun would probably be a corpse now. In the face of Xiao Sheng's reproach, Xiao Chun was nothing. He smiled helplessly. "Do you know who did it?" Xiao Sheng asked Xiao Sheng, but he didn't have any clues. Of course, Zhao's the Bai family. But in the face of Xiao Sheng's question, he didn't know who the mastermind was. Seeing this, Xiao Sheng didn't say anything more and turned to look at the Bai family. At the same time, Randing and the other 2 also came to Xiao Chen's side. Their eyes were flashing with strong, killing intent. Faced with the oppression of Xiao Sheng and the other 3 quasi-saint great venerables, the leading saint of the Bai family knew that this operation had failed. With Xiao Sheng and the other 3 quasi-saint great venerables around, the Bai family would not be able to cause any trouble. He felt bitter in his heart. In the end, he still couldn't kill Xiao Chun. He took the initiative to distance himself from Zheng Ping. Then, the leader of the Bai family took a deep look at Xiao Chun. His eyes were full of unwillingness, but in the end, this unwillingness turned into a strong death intent. In an instant, the leader of the Bai family seemed to have lost his vitality, and his eyes also lost their luster. The leader of the Bai family committed suicide by severing his own heart meridian. Indeed, he didn't have the slightest desire to live. Seeing the arrival of Xiao Sheng and the other three, the leader of the Bai family directly chose to commit suicide. Following the leader's suicide, the other experts of the Bai family also chose to commit suicide. Seeing this, Xiao Sheng and the other three immediately prepared to attack. After all, they still didn't know who the mastermind was. If they didn't leave anyone alive, how could they get any useful clues from them? However, just as Xiao Sheng and the other three were about to attack, Xiao Chun shook his head and said, "Forget it. These people are all men of sacrifice. It's useless." It was almost impossible to get anything out of these people, so Xiao Chun gave up this plan. Moreover, Xiao Chun already had a suspect in his heart. The whole thing started with the compulsory mission. In other words, it was very likely that this matter was related to the mission hall. Someone had specially arranged this compulsory mission for him and lured him into the trap. Therefore, instead of wasting time on these unknown men of sacrifice, it was better to investigate the mission hall when he returned. Perhaps he would discover something. Xiao Chun didn't let the four of them attack. Seeing this, Xiao Sheng and the other three nodded slightly and didn't stubbornly insist. The experts from the Bai clan quickly committed suicide one after another. None of them survived. It was likely that they knew that once the mission failed, they could only commit suicide. This was because they could not live. If they died, they could still protect their descendants and relatives. If they lived, Bai Mushuang would definitely think of ways to silence them and use this to destroy the evidence. At that time, it was very likely that their families would be implicated. The crisis was resolved with the collective suicide of the Bai family. At this moment, Zheng Ping led the three saints of the Mingjing gang to Xiao Chun again. He bowed to Xiao Chun and the other three and said, "Chosen one Xiao Chun, seniors. I have to thank gang leader Zheng for this." Xiao Chun smiled. No matter what, he was indebted to Zheng Ping this time. Moreover, it was a great debt of gratitude, so Xiao Chun's attitude towards Zheng Ping was rather friendly. Zheng Ping was naturally overjoyed by Xiao Chun's attitude. Afterwards, the group headed to Ming City under Zheng Ping's invitation. The Bai family had been wiped out, and Xiao Chun had managed to escape unscathed. Compared to Xiao Chun, who had survived the disaster, Lin Tianfeng, who was in the headquarters of the Celestial Tribute Society in Feng City, was in a particularly heavy mood. It was he who had helped the Bai family find Xiao Chun's whereabouts. It wasn't difficult to investigate this matter. As long as Xiao Chun wanted to, it was very easy to accomplish. Xiao Chun was fine, and the experts of the Yin and Yang sects had arrived. If Xiao Chun wanted to, the fate of the celestial faction could be imagined. Lin Tianfeng's face was extremely sunken as he sat alone in the main hall. It was also at this moment that the other two saints from the Celestial Society hurried in as well. They looked at Lin Tianfeng anxiously. "Gang leader, what do we do now? Xiao Chun is fine, and the experts of the Yin and Yang sect have arrived. What should we do now?" The two saints were also panicking. However, Lin Tianfeng didn't answer their questions. It wasn't that he didn't want to answer, but that he didn't know how to answer. What did he do now? Run? That was obviously impossible. Fight to the death? That was no different from trying to smash a rock with an egg. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1359. Lin Tianfeng was extremely vexed. He knew very well that the Celestial Worship Gang was an ant that could be annihilated with a wave of their hand. The Celestial Worship Gang could be annihilated with a single thought from the Taiyang sect. There was nothing he could do. He could only hope that Xiao Chun wouldn't notice the Celestial Worship Gang, or that Xiao Chun wouldn't care about the Celestial Worship Gang. He would just let them go like a fart. Unfortunately, Lin Tianfeng's hopes were probably going to be dashed, because right at this moment, Meng Jie Bing Lian, and a saint from the Zheng gang had appeared outside the city. Not long ago, when Xiao Qin's group was preparing to return to Ming City, Zheng Ping had told Xiao Qun about the Celestial Worship Gang. Holy Son Xiao Qun, there is something I want to report to you. The Celestial Worship Gang is actually involved in this matter. They helped those mysterious people find your whereabouts. As the local tyrant of the land of 100 rivers, Zheng Ping was obviously more well-informed. Hearing this, Xiao Qun said nonchalantly, "Then there's no need for the Celestial Worship Society to exist." Just like that, Meng Jie and Bing Lian were led to Feng City by a saint from the Mingzheng gang. The two beautiful women slowly walked out of the city. When they saw Meng Jie and Ice Lotus, the members of the Celestial Tribute Gang who were in charge of guarding the city gates all revealed infatuated expressions. However, the saint from the Mingzheng gang sneered when he saw their expressions. They were already at death's door, yet they still dared to lust after the beauties of these two fiends. He had to admit that Meng Jie and Bing Lian were very beautiful, but this kind of beauty couldn't be blasphemed. The two of them were genuine quasi-saint supreme sovereigns. Thus, the saint from the Mingzheng gang had been conscientious in his duty the entire time. He didn't dare to have any thoughts or disrespect toward the two women. He didn't even dare to look at them. Fiery gazes continued to be cast over. Ice Lotus didn't say anything and directly made her move. A light blue spiritual energy soared into the sky from Ice Lotus and crazily spread in all directions. In an instant, the entire area outside the city was covered in a thick layer of ice. The city walls, people, and ground were all turned into ice sculptures. As the cold air spread, the entire Feng City seemed to have turned into a world of ice and snow. The martialists in the city were also turned into ice sculptures without exception. This ice rule. The Ice Lotus only emitted a small amount of power, and the entire Wind City was sealed in ice. Ice Law was a second-level law, and was on par with Bai Qiran's Lightning Law. However, Bing Lian's understanding of Ice Law was clearly much deeper than Bai Qiran's understanding of the Lightning Law. In an instant, the entire city was frozen. After doing all this, Bing Lian's expression didn't change. "Let's go. Aren't there still 3 saints in the Feng Tian gang?" Bing Lian didn't wait for the saint from the Mingzheng gang to reply and walked with Meng Jie into the frozen Feng City. In the Feng City headquarters, Lin Tianfeng, who was still vexed, suddenly felt the temperature plummet and a chill swept over him. After reaching the saint stage, Lin Tianfeng was no longer afraid of the heat and cold. But now he actually felt a chill. For a moment, Lin Tianfeng thought that he was hallucinating. But soon, he heard the 2 saints beside him yelling in alarm. "Gang leader, it's frozen." Along with this horrified yell, Lin Tianfeng saw a thick layer of ice forming on the ground outside the courtyard. Moreover, this layer of ice was still spreading. This layer of ice was different from ordinary ice. It was light blue in color, and at the same time, an extreme chill constantly emanated from it. "Damn it, this is..." Lin Tianfeng cursed inwardly as he watched the layer of ice spread into the main hall. At this moment, Lin Tianfeng and the other 2 saints still didn't know that apart from the 3 of them, everyone else in the entire Feng City had turned into ice sculptures. Not daring to hesitate, the 3 of them immediately circulated the spiritual energy in their bodies with all their might to resist the incoming chill. As saints, they naturally had the ability to resist the chill. But even so, the intense chill made them shiver uncontrollably. Using all of his spiritual energy, he was only able to prevent himself from being frozen, and this was already extremely difficult. While Lin Tianfeng and the other 2 saints were resisting the chill with all their might, Bing Lian, Meng Jie, and the saint from the Mingzheng gang entered the courtyard slowly. At this moment, the saint from the Mingzheng gang was in a similar situation as Lin Tianfeng and the other 2 saints. He was also shivering from the cold, but didn't dare to say anything. Lin Tianfeng strolled into the main hall and gazed at Bing Lian and Meng Jie with a horrified expression. It seemed like he had guessed something. "I'm an elder of the Heavenly Note solar sect. Your Feng Tian gang was also involved in Xiao Chen's matter, right? Bing Lian asked as she gazed at Lin Tianfeng and the other two saints with her blue pupils. Xiao Chun and the other three saints were indeed elders of the heavenly Yin solar sect. However, they were only in name and belonged to the category of guest elders. Facing Bing Lian's question, Lin Tianfeng's legs went weak and he immediately knelt to the ground. The two saints beside him also did the same. "Spare our lives, madam. Please spare our lives. We had no choice." Lin Tianfeng knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Even though he was a saint, someone like him could only be considered a coward who was afraid of death. Bing Lian's expression didn't change in the face of Lin Tianfeng's pleas. She continued to exude an oppressive chill. "Tell me who the mastermind is, and I can consider sparing your life." Lin Tianfeng had gone to the Feng Tian gang for revenge, and also to find out the identity of the mastermind. However, in the face of Bing Lian's inquiry, Lin Tianfeng shook his head repeatedly, indicating that he really didn't know who the mastermind was. In fact, Lin Tianfeng wasn't lying. When the Bai family found him, they didn't reveal their identity. They only promised a generous reward. It was because of greed that Lin Tianfeng agreed to cooperate with the Bai family. In fact, Lin Tianfeng didn't know who the mastermind was at all. Judging from Lin Tianfeng's words and actions, it didn't seem like he was lying. Bing Lian simply said, "Since that's the case, then so be it." Not giving Lin Tianfeng a chance to speak, Bing Lian's eyes flickered with a faint blue light. Then, she gently stretched out her right hand. In an instant, a snowstorm began to blow around them. The wind and snow filled the sky, making it impossible for anyone to open their eyes. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1360. The snowstorm wreaked havoc in the hall, and Mengjie stepped in to protect the saint from the Mingjing gang. After all, he wasn't strong enough to withstand such a terrifying snowstorm. With Mengjie's protection, the saint from the Mingjing gang was naturally fine. However, Lin Tianfeng and the other two weren't so lucky. Under the raging snowstorm, the three of them quickly turned into three ice sculptures. Their vitality had been completely extinguished. After doing all this, Bing Lian turned to look at Mengjie. The two women nodded slightly, then turned and left without the slightest hesitation. Afterwards, the Celestial Society was destroyed. In fact, from the beginning to the end, only Ice Lotus had acted. Mengjie hadn't acted at all. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to find out any information about the mastermind. It seemed that the mastermind was very careful and didn't leave any traces behind. After dealing with the Mingjing gang, Bing Lian, Mengjie, and the saint from the Mingjing gang returned to Ming City. At the same time, Zheng Ping also asked to see Xiao Chun. The two of them met in the backyard of the Mingjing gang's mansion. Xiao Chun sat on a bamboo chair in the courtyard, while Zheng Ping stood respectfully in front of Xiao Chun. Looking at Zheng Ping, Xiao Chun smiled. "Gang leader Zheng, there's no need to be so polite. Have a seat." Xiao Chen's attitude towards Zheng Ping could be considered polite. Whether it was status or strength, Zheng Ping couldn't compare to Xiao Chun. If it were any other saint, Xiao Chun wouldn't even spare them a glance. That's right, saints were lofty existences in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the eyes of the chosen on the saint ranking, saints were nothing. This was because any chosen on the saint ranking had the strength to kill a saint. It was also because Zheng Ping had saved his life that Xiao Chun was so polite to him. However, Zheng Ping wasn't a fool and knew how to face Xiao Chun. Therefore, ever since Xiao Chun came to Ming City, Zheng Ping had always been very respectful. He didn't think that he was arrogant just because he had saved Xiao Chen's life. Xiao Chun was very satisfied with this. At least it proved that Zheng Ping knew when to advance and when to retreat, and that he could see the big picture. Xiao Chen gestured for Zheng Ping to sit. However, Zheng Ping knelt on the ground without any warning and bowed deeply to Xiao Chun. Seeing this, Xiao Chun hurriedly got up and personally helped Zheng Ping up. He asked with a questioning look, "Faction leader Zheng, what are you doing?" Holy Son Shao Chun, to be honest, I have a presumptuous request, and I hope you can agree to it. Holy Son, please don't misunderstand. I'm not forcing you to repay me. Zheng Ping said. It's finally here. Shao Chun had already guessed that Zheng Ping must have a motive for saving him, so he wasn't surprised. In fact, the fact that Zheng Ping was able to say it out loud made Shao Chun think even more highly of him. Just as Zheng Ping said, he didn't dare to force Shao Chun to repay him. Instead, he used the method of requesting and even pleading to reveal his motive to Shao Chun. Upon hearing Zheng Ping's words, Shao Chun interrupted before he could finish his sentence. What are you talking about, gang leader Zheng? There's no harm in just stating your request. Shao Chun, will definitely not decline as long as it's within my capabilities. Repaying kindness had always been Shao Chun's principle. Moreover, in order to save him, the Mingzheng gang suffered huge casualties. Almost half of the thousands of people died in the battle. Upon hearing Shao Chun's words, Zheng Ping didn't hesitate any longer and immediately stated his request. Zheng Ping only had two requests. First, he hoped that the Mingzheng gang could walk out of the land of 100 rivers openly and didn't have to wait for death in this godforsaken place. Second, it was Zheng Ping's personal matter. He wanted to avenge himself through Shao Chun by beheading the young master of the Xinyuan family, who killed his wife and child back then to appease the spirits of his wife and child in heaven. After stating both requests in one breath, Zheng Ping intentionally added, as he was afraid that Shao Chun would misunderstand. Holy Son Shao Chun, perhaps some of us who entered the land of 100 rivers deserved it, but some of us were forced to do so. Otherwise, no one would want to stay in such a godforsaken place where it's difficult to progress for the rest of our lives, and where we can only wait for death every day. Therefore, I implore Holy Son Shao Chun to bring us out of the land of 100 rivers. As for the second request, it's my personal matter. If Holy Son finds it difficult, I won't dare to ask for more. Shao Chun could choose not to agree to the second request. This was Zheng Ping's intention. Upon hearing that, Shao Chun revealed a smile and looked at Zheng Ping. What? Do you think I care about a mere Xinyuan family disciple? Naturally, Shao Chun wouldn't care about a mere Xinyuan family disciple. He had even offended Xinyuan Baijian, so killing an ordinary Xinyuan family disciple wouldn't be a big deal. However, Zheng Ping didn't know what Shao Chun meant. Upon hearing this, Zheng Ping immediately said in a somewhat frightened manner, Holy Son, you've misunderstood. I didn't mean that. All right, I understand what you mean. How about this? I'll help you leave the land of 100 rivers. Furthermore, if you're willing, you can join my sacred palace. For saints like you can enter the sacred palace and become sacred sovereigns. As for the rest, they will naturally be allocated according to their cultivation. Of course, even if their cultivation is too low and their talent is too poor, I can also let them become servants in the sacred palace. This way, their lives and safety will at least be guaranteed, and they won't have nowhere to stay, even if they leave the land of 100 rivers. Shao Chun looked at Zheng Ping and said indifferently. In this way, Shao Chun had agreed to Zheng Ping's first request. Moreover, it could be said that he had helped the Xinyuan family to leave the land of 100 rivers. He could even accept them into the sacred palace regardless of their cultivation level. At the very least, he could give them the status of servants. Although servants were the lowest level of existence in the sacred palace and were far inferior to even nominal disciples, at the very least, if they could enter the sacred palace, they would at least have a place to stay and wouldn't have to wander around. Their safety would also be protected by the sacred palace. Upon hearing Shao Chun's words, Zheng Ping was first taken aback, but then he was overjoyed. He repeatedly bowed to Shao Chun and said, Thank you, Holy Son. Thank you, Holy Son. All right, don't be in such a hurry to thank me. This is the first request. As for your second request, I'll agree to it. However, I can't guarantee the time because I can't just kill my way to the Xinyuan family and capture them. But I can promise you one thing. As long as I have the chance, I will personally chop off that dog's head for you and give it to you. Xiao Chun agreed to the second request without hesitation. To Xiao Chun, killing a member of the Xinyuan clan was a piece of cake. There was no difficulty at all. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1361. Xiao Chun agreed to Zheng Ping's 2 requests without hesitation. In fact, Zheng Ping's 2 requests were nothing to Xiao Chun. They were 2 very simple requests. Whether it was helping Ming Zheng leave the land of 100 rivers or avenging Zheng Ping, it was not difficult for Xiao Chun to do either. Furthermore, Zheng Ping had saved his life, so it was reasonable for him to repay the favor. Seeing Xiao Chun agree, Zheng Ping was so excited that he wanted to kneel again. However, Xiao Chun stopped him first. Gang leader Zheng, you don't have to do this in the future, Xiao Chun said seriously as he stopped Zheng Ping from moving. To be honest, Xiao Chun was really not used to people kneeling in front of him for no reason. After agreeing to Zheng Ping's request, Xiao Chun asked about the sky sunflower. Although Xiao Chun had been attacked during this mission, Xiao Chun suspected that the person behind this was from the mission hall. In any case, it was definitely related to the mission hall. However, he didn't have any evidence right now, so Xiao Chun decided to keep quiet for now. After completing the mission, he would return to the Taiyang sect and slowly investigate. In any case, there would always be evidence. There was no wall in the world that didn't have a crack. As the leader of the land of 100 rivers, Zheng Ping was naturally very familiar with the sky sunflower. When Xiao Chun asked, Zheng Ping immediately said that the Mingzheng gang had a well-preserved sky sunflower. Although the sky sunflower could only be picked when it bloomed, once it was picked, it could be preserved through some special methods. After learning that the Mingzheng gang had a sky sunflower, Xiao Chun's face lit up. This saved him a lot of trouble. He wasn't in a hurry to return to the Taiyang sect. At the same time, Xiao Chun sent a message to the Taiyang sect, saying that the crisis had been resolved and that there was no need for the Taiyang sect's experts to come. It seemed that he didn't intend to investigate further. Xiao Chun continued to stay in Ming City, waiting for Zheng Ping to deal with the matter of the Mingzheng gang leaving the land of 100 rivers. Mingzheng gang did not have many members, only 2,000 or 3,000. But this time, they were going to leave the land of 100 rivers. Naturally, there were many things they had to deal with. He did not rush Zheng Ping. He had already stayed in Ming City for 2 days. While Xiao Chun continued to stay in the land of 100 rivers, in the Bai family's residence in White Lunar City, it was still the same big hall. However, at this moment, only Bai Mushuang was sitting alone in the big hall. His face was somewhat ferocious. Apparently, Bai Mushuang already knew what had happened in the 100 Rivers land. 7 saints, 100 half-saints, and Dao Emperor realm experts. Such a force had actually failed in the end. After paying such a huge price, he still couldn't kill Xiao Chun. Bai Mushuang's heart was already bleeding. For this operation, the Bai family had lost almost 1/5 of their combat power. Now, Xiao Chun was still missing, and the Bai family had to constantly worry about Xiao Chun's revenge. Damn it! Why can't I kill that little bastard? Bai Mushuang felt more and more aggrieved in his heart. In the end, he couldn't help but shout angrily. As a quasi-saint, Bai Mushuang couldn't even control his own emotions. It was obvious how terrible his mood was at this moment. In addition to his anger, Bai Mushuang was also filled with endless worry and fear. He was afraid that the matter would be exposed. At that time, the Bai family would definitely face a disaster. Even the Bai family's ancestor, Bai Zhen, might not be able to protect the Bai family at that time. Although he was worried, Bai Mushuang quickly comforted himself. No, he won't be able to find out. This time, we were already extremely careful. We didn't leave behind any clues. Even if Xiao Chun has the ability to reach the heavens, he will absolutely not be able to find out that it was our Bai family. Bai Mushuang could only comfort himself and try to numb himself for fear of being exposed after the operation failed. Meanwhile, Bai Mulin was in a completely different situation. He sat in his study in his courtyard, his expression calm, without the slightest hint of sadness or joy. He simply stared blankly out the window, for more than 2 hours. Bai Mulan hadn't spoken or moved for more than 2 hours. Finally, he looked away, and a self-deprecating smile appeared on his face. Did the good deed fail? The Bai family is in big trouble. In contrast to Bai Mushuang's self-consolation, Bai Mulan was able to clearly see the reality of the situation. The operation had failed, and the Heavenine solar sect and Bai Mulan knew about it. Bai Mulan knew that the Bai family was finished. In contrast to Bai Mushuang's stupidity, Bai Mulan was clearly a smart person and had been since he was a child. As a child, Bai Mulan was much smarter and calmer than his older brother. Bai Mushuang could only see Xiao Chun in this matter. What he didn't know was that the real threat to the Bai clan wasn't Xiao Chun, but rather Yin Yangzi. Xiao Chun might not be able to find out anything, but Yin Yangzi was different. If Yin Yangzi wanted to do something, the Bai clan wouldn't be able to do anything about it. If Xiao Chun had already been killed, then a dead genius, a dead holy child of the sage rankings, wouldn't have been worth Yin Yangzi making such a big fuss about. But things were different now. Xiao Chun was fine, but a living genius, a holy child of the sage rankings, was a completely different story. In order to give Xiao Chun an explanation, Yin Yangzi wouldn't hesitate to wipe out the Bai clan. That would appease Xiao Chun, win Xiao Chun over, and make Xiao Chun feel a greater sense of belonging to the Heavenine solar sect and solar sect. Bai Mushuang was an idiot who didn't see Yin Yangzi's point of view. He still believed that Xiao Chun wouldn't be able to find out anything. Little did he know that Xiao Chun wouldn't even need to do anything. Yin Yangzi would just send him a huge gift. It was almost as if he could already see the Bai clan being wiped out. In the face of such a situation, there was nothing Bai Mulan could do. From the moment he had decided to kill Xiao Chun, the Bai clan had no way out. If they failed, they would be wiped out. There was no other way. Bai Mulan was well aware of that. It's time to make some preparations. Sighing, Bai Mulan rose to his feet and headed toward the depths of the Bai clan mansion, where Patriarch Baizhan was in secluded meditation. Just as Bai Mulan was thinking, in the heavenly Yin Yang sect, in Master Yin Yangzi's residence, an old servant was sitting on a prayer mat with his eyes closed as the old man next to him respectfully said, "Master Yin Yangzi, Master Yin Yangzi." "Master, I've already found out that the mandatory mission was issued by Hall Master He Tao of the mission's hall." "Oh," Yin Yangzi said coolly, not opening his eyes. "Does that mean it has something to do with He Tao?" Bai Mulan had underestimated Yin Yangzi. It had only been 2 days, but Yin Yangzi had already found out about He Tao. Bai Mulan hadn't expected things to progress so quickly, and there was no need to even mention the idiot Bai Mushuang. He was probably still lying to himself and hadn't even thought about it. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1362. Yin Yangzi was swift and decisive. In just 2 days, he had already found He Tao. Upon hearing this, the old servant did not reply. He just stood aside quietly and waited for Yin Yangzi's decision. In fact, just as Bai Mulan had expected, if this operation succeeded in killing Xiao Chun, Yin Yangzi would definitely not investigate further. At most, he would just put on a show because a dead genius no longer had any value. Naturally, Yin Yangzi would not make such a big fuss about it. However, the reality was the opposite. The Bai clan's operation had failed, and Xiao Chun was fine. In this case, Yin Yangzi would definitely give Xiao Chun an explanation. In other words, in order to better rope in Xiao Chun, Yin Yangzi would definitely investigate further. Yin Yangzi slowly opened his slightly closed eyes and said indifferently, "You and Qin Guang will be responsible for this matter. No matter who it is, kill them." It was a simple sentence, but it could be said that it was a death sentence for the Bai clan. Upon hearing this, the old servant nodded respectfully and disappeared on the spot. Since they had already found He Tao, he naturally became a breakthrough point. Therefore, the old servant went to look for Qin Guang that night. The two of them brought several elders from the punishment hall directly to He Tao's cave residence. Logically speaking, as the hall master of the mission hall and a half-step great saint stage cultivation base, He Tao's status in the heavenly Yin Yang sect should not be low. Ordinary people were not qualified to arrest him at all. Even the punishment hall master, Qin Guang, could not make a move on He Tao without any evidence. Unfortunately, this time, Yin Yangzi had personally given the order. In this case, Qin Guang and the old servant did not have to worry about the consequences. They directly rushed into He Tao's cave residence. In the backyard, the group of people found He Tao drinking alone. When he saw Qin Guang and the old servant, there was not the slightest surprise on He Tao's face. It was as if he had already expected today's outcome. He Tao drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. He stood up and looked at Qin Guang with a smile. "Brother Qin Guang, are you here to arrest me? You should know," Qin Guang said expressionlessly when he heard this. Now that things had developed to this point, He Tao understood that he could no longer escape. Xiaochen was not dead. The Bai clan's failure had caused them to lose everything. Without any resistance, He Tao took the initiative to follow Qin Guang and the old servant back to the punishment hall. In the punishment hall, He Tao did not need Qin Guang to do anything. He Tao had taken the initiative to confess everything, including his secret meeting with Bai Mu Shuang and how Bai Mu Shuang had asked him to arrange a compulsory mission for Xiaochen. Without much effort, Qin Guang and the old servant learned the truth from He Tao. The mastermind was the Bai family. After telling the truth, Qin Guang looked at He Tao and said, "I will plead with the patriarch. At the very least, I can save your life." Qin Guang already knew that He Tao was not the mastermind. At most, He Tao was an accomplice. With so many years of friendship, Qin Guang did not want to see He Tao die like this. He was willing to plead for He Tao in front of Yin Yangzi. He Tao knew that with Qin Guang's character, these words would definitely not be false. However, hearing this, He Tao smiled slightly and said, "Brother Qin, you are too kind. However, what's the point of living on while at death's door? I appreciate Brother Qin's kindness." He Tao did not intend to let Qin Guang plead for him. He Tao's face flushed red. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell directly to the ground. He Tao had severed his own heart meridian. Since he entered the punishment hall, He Tao had made up his mind to die. Therefore, he chose to kill himself without hesitation. Qin Guang sighed softly when he saw He Tao sever his own heart meridian. A half-step great sage died, just like that. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Ever since Yin Yangzi gave the order to thoroughly investigate this matter, He Tao's fate had already been decided. Even if Yin Yangzi spared his life in the end, he would definitely exhaust his cultivation. This was already the best outcome. As for He Tao, there was no meaning in living without cultivation. He might as well just die. He ordered people to carry He Tao's body away. Now that He Tao was dead, the Bai family was next. The Bai family was the mastermind behind the whole thing. At the same time, Qin Guang knew very well that the Bai family killed Xiaochen at all costs for revenge. Unfortunately, they did not get their revenge in the end. They even sacrificed themselves. Qin Guang looked at the old servant and said, "Should we do it directly or report it to the ancestor?" Now that he knew who the mastermind was, Qin Guang asked the old servant whether the punishment hall should destroy the Bai family directly or report it to Yin Yangzi first and wait for Yin Yangzi to decide. The old servant replied softly to Qin Guang's question, "Let's do it directly." Master said that no matter who it is, kill them all. There was no need to report it to Yin Yangzi. Qin Guang nodded. Then, Qin Guang and the old servant led a group of experts from the punishment hall and left the Heavenly Yin Sun sect. They went straight to White Moon City, where the Bai family was located. They did not expect Yin Yangzi to act so quickly and ruthlessly. He did not give the Bai family any chance. While Qin Guang and the others were leaving in the Bai family's mansion, Bai Mu Shuang was still regretting the failure of the operation. He sat alone in the courtyard and drank wine. Bai Mulin went to the cave abode where the ancestor of the Bai family, Bai Zhen, was in seclusion. He had successfully met the ancestor. Bai Zhen was dressed in simple, coarse linen clothes. His hair was snow white, but his complexion was rosy and white like a baby. Bai Zhen rarely showed himself since he retreated behind the scenes. At this time, after listening to Bai Mulin, who was standing respectfully in front of him, telling him the whole story, Bai Zhen cursed in a low voice with an ugly expression. Idiot! Bai Zhen's words were directed at Bai Mulin and Bai Mushuang. Bai Mulin did not dare to refute. He lowered his head and stood respectfully. After cursing under his breath, Bai Zhen fell into deep thought. The old man and the young man remained silent. The atmosphere became somewhat stifling. After a long while, Bai Zhen sighed softly. Prepare for your funeral. At the very least, leave behind a trace of the Bai family's bloodline. You two brothers are really stupid. You actually dared to provoke a chosen on the holy rankings, and a chosen on the holy rankings with a bright future. Don't you understand that in Yangzi's eyes, even 10 Bai families cannot compare to one Xiaochun? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1363. Bai Zhen knew very well that the Bai clan was in deep trouble this time. Bai Mulin, who was by the side, heard this and asked in disbelief. Patriarch, the Bai clan has stood strong for so many years. Are we really going to be destroyed because of one Xiaochun? Patriarch, you have some connections in the Taiyang sect of Heavening. Maybe you can ask them to. The Bai clan had stood strong in White Moon City for so many years, and its influence was deeply intertwined. Even in the Taiyang sect of Heavening, the Bai clan had many connections, especially with Bai Zhen, who had many half-step great sages in the Taiyang sect of Heavening. Bai Mulin had taken the initiative to speak with Bai Zhen, hoping that he might be able to resolve this crisis. However, after hearing Bai Mulin's words, Bai Zhen shook his head and laughed bitterly. It's useless. If it was any other matter, perhaps those people would give me some face. However, this is Yin Yangzi's decision. Do you think anyone would dare to go against Yin Yangzi's wishes? If the Onmyoji was determined to investigate the matter thoroughly and give Xiao Chen an explanation, then the Bai clan's connections wouldn't be worth mentioning. Nobody would dare to go against Yin Yangzi at a time like this. There was no other way, so Bai Zhen immediately prepared for the worst. That was to secretly transfer a group of the Bai family's direct descendants to preserve a trace of the Bai family's bloodline. However, Bai Zhen hadn't expected that Yin Yangzi wouldn't given the time to do so. By now, Qin Guang, an old servant, had already led a group of experts from Punishment Hall to White Moon City. They were on their way to the Bai family's residence. Qin Guang and the others used the teleportation portal to arrive in White Moon City. While Bai Mulin and Bai Zhen were talking, a Bai clan saint walked into Bai Mushuang's courtyard and looked anxiously at Bai Mushuang, who was drinking. Bad news, Patriarch. Qin Guang, the head of the Punishment Hall of the Taiyang sect of Heavening, is here with a group of experts. They've already surrounded the Bai clan's mansion. Qin Guang? Hearing this person's words, Bai Mushuang frowned slightly. He naturally knew of Qin Guang. However, what did Qin Guang mean by personally visiting at this time? Without much time to think, Bai Mushuang got up and strode toward the front yard. In the front yard, Bai Mushuang saw Qin Guang, the old servant, and a group of elders from the Punishment Hall striding over. There were only 12 of them. However, without exception, the weakest among them was a quasi-saint. For example, Qin Guang and the old servant were both half-step great saints. At the same time, nearly 100 deacons from the Punishment Hall had already surrounded the entire Bai clan mansion. Even a fly would find it difficult to fly out of the encirclement. Seeing Qin Guang striding over, Bai Mushuang took the initiative to greet him. He revealed a warm smile and said, "Palace Master Qin Guang, what brings you here today?" It looked like they were very familiar with each other, but facing Bai Mushuang's enthusiasm, Qin Guang simply said, "He Tao is dead." He Tao was dead. These simple words made Bai Mushuang feel as if he had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. How did He Tao die? Furthermore, what did He Tao's death have to do with Qin Guang's arrival? There were countless questions in his heart, but on the surface, Bai Mushuang still put on an act and said, "Hall Master He Tao? How'd he die? Palace Master Qin, are you joking?" Bai Mushuang was still feigning ignorance. In this regard, Qin Guang was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He said indifferently, "Don't you know why He Tao is dead?" These words were very obvious. Hearing this, Bai Mushuang was stunned. At this moment, Bai Zhen and Bai Mulan appeared on the scene. At the same time, a large number of experts from the Bai clan also poured into the courtyard. Both sides faced each other, but the expressions of the leaders, Bai Zhen and Qin Guang, did not change much. Speaking of Bai Zhen, Qin Guang had some contact with him. After all, as a half-step great sage, Bai Zhen was also a nominal elder in the heavenly yin-yang sect. Naturally, the two knew each other. Bai Zhen obviously rushed over after receiving the news. He first looked at Qin Guang, then at the old servant beside Qin Guang. His expression changed slightly. Bai Zhen sighed softly. "Old Chun, I didn't expect you to come too." The old servant's surname was Chun. As for his name, no one knew, so everyone called him Old Chun. The meaning of Old Chun's appearance here was self-evident. This was Yin Yangzi's idea and Yin Yangzi's approval. Hearing this, Old Chun nodded faintly and said, "You can only bear the consequences of what you have done." Yin Yangzi's order was very simple. Therefore, the Bai clan was destined to be destroyed. Hearing this, Bai Zhen showed a somewhat helpless smile, but then a soaring aura erupted from his body. His gaze towards Qin Guang and Old Chun also became sharp at this moment. He said coldly, "Old Chun, you're right. You can only bear the consequences of what you have done. However, I, Bai Zhen, don't have the habit of waiting to be captured." Despite knowing that the outcome was already decided, Bai Zhen still planned to make a move. His purpose was none other than to preserve a trace of the Bai clan's bloodline and secretly send a small part of the Bai clan away during the chaos. Unfortunately, Bai Zhen's plan was destined to be impossible. At this moment, the entire Bai clan's mansion was surrounded by the punishment hall's powerhouses. Let alone a person, even a fly would not be able to escape. At this point, there was nothing more to say. This time, the Bai clan could be said to be seeking death. Regardless of whether it was Old Chun or Qin Guang, they would not disobey Yin Yangzi's order. Therefore, as Bai Zhen's aura soared into the sky, Qin Guang and Old Chin's aura also erupted from their bodies at the same time. The aura of the three half-step Great Saint Stage powerhouses instantly stirred up the wind and clouds. The space above the Bai clan's mansion was distorted as a storm raged. The three of them looked at each other, but no one said a word. Almost at the same time, the three of them moved at the same time. All of them took a step forward and disappeared into the void. After Qin Guang and Bai Zhen made their move, the quasi-saints and saint from both sides naturally would not just stand there and do nothing. They also made their moves. The powerhouses above the saint stage all entered the void to fight. However, compared to the Bai clan, the heavenly Yin and solar sex powerhouses were obviously much more numerous. Both sides were not on the same level at all. It could be said that the Bai clan was only struggling on the verge of death. As the powerhouses began to fight, the punishment hall's deacons who were responsible for surrounding the Bai clan also made their move. They charged into the Bai clan from different directions and killed everyone regardless of gender, age, or age. For a time, the entire Bai clan seemed to have fallen into hell. All kinds of martial skills were used everywhere, and miserable shrieks rose and fell one after another, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1364. This day was destined to be the end of the Bai family. The elders of the punishment hall of the heavenly Yin solar sect didn't even give the Bai family any time to react. Battle cries shook the sky. Countless Bai family members in the Bai family's mansion became ghosts under the blade. They all paid the price with their lives for what Bai Mushuang had done. Compared to the chaotic battle outside, the experts of the Bai family and the heavenly Yin solar sect were also incomparably fierce in the void. Of course, outsiders couldn't see the battle here, but the heavenly Yin solar sect still had an overwhelming advantage. The number of experts on the heavenly Yin solar sect side was much greater than the Bai family's. After several hours of fierce battle, the Bai family's saints began to fall. As the corpses of the saints fell from the void, a rain of blood began to fall from the sky. At first, it was the saints, followed by the quasi-saints. The first quasi-saint to fall was the current head of the Bai family, Bai Mushuang. Even until his death, Bai Mushuang couldn't believe that his decision had directly caused the Bai family to fall into eternal damnation. Yangzi didn't give the Bai family the slightest chance at all, and this was just to give Shao Chen an explanation. Just as the Bai family's old ancestor, Bai Zhen, said, in Yangzi's eyes, 10 Bai families added together couldn't compare to Shao Chen. It was ridiculous that the Bai family wanted to set a trap to kill Shao Chen. Bai Mushuang was the first to fall, followed by Bai Mulin and the other quasi-saint great venerables. Seeing the Bai family's experts fall one after another, Bai Zhen, who was fighting fiercely with Qin Guang and Old Chen, quickly became gloomy. He knew that the Bai family was finished. After this battle, there would be no more Bai family in the world. Bai Zhen's gaze swept across Qin Guang and Old Chen. He didn't say anything. Bai Zhen was naturally under a lot of pressure when facing these two people at the same time. Although it wasn't to the point of being in a life-and-death crisis, Bai Zhen still couldn't escape death if he continued to fight even though he was a half-step great sage. A self-deprecating smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The Bai clan, which could be said to have once dominated a region, was now almost annihilated overnight. And this was only because Yangzi wanted to give Shao Chen an explanation. A single word determined life and death. This was the prestige of the great sage. Even if you were from a secondary saint clan, you wouldn't be able to resist. Forget it, forget it. Everything is fate. Bai Zhen murmured. He no longer had any intention of continuing the battle with Qin Guang and Old Chen. Seeing the members of the Bai clan being slaughtered one by one, Bai Zhen's fighting spirit had long fallen to the bottom. They had already lost this battle. Even if he won, what could he change? In the end, the Bai family had perished. Without waiting for Qin Guang and Elder Chen to reply, Bai Zhen directly broke his own heart meridian and committed suicide. Seeing Bai Zhen commit suicide, Qin Guang and Elder Chen didn't stop him. At this point, the battle was gradually coming to an end. Bai Zhen and many experts of the Bai clan were all killed. The remaining members of the Bai clan were unable to resist at all. The sun slowly rose and shone its light on the earth. However, the Bai clan's residence was littered with corpses. The corpses of the Bai clan members were scattered everywhere. Their blood dyed the entire Bai clan's residence red. Landing lightly outside the Bai clan's main hall, Qin Guang looked at the scene in front of him and sighed softly. Then he said to the few punishment hall elders beside him, "Clean up and give them a proper burial." According to Yangzi's orders, all the members of the Bai clan had been killed. The only thing Qin Guang could do was to give them a proper burial. Otherwise, their corpses would be exposed in the wilderness. Were all the members of the Bai clan dead? In fact, there was still one member of the Bai clan who wasn't dead. She was Bai Mulin's daughter, Bai Jin. Bai Jin was Xianyuan Bai Zhen's woman, so under normal circumstances, she wouldn't be in the Bai clan. Instead, she would stay by Xianyuan Bai Zhen's side. It was precisely because Bai Jin wasn't present that he managed to avoid this disaster. Of course, Qin Guang and Elder Chen knew this as well. However, there was nothing they could do. The Xianyuan clan wasn't much weaker than the Taiyang sect. They couldn't charge into the Xianyuan clan and kill them. There was still a fish that had escaped the net, but there was nothing they could do. Qin Guang and Elder Chen could only report this matter to Yangzi and let Yangzi make the decision himself. However, even if Bai Jin was still alive, she couldn't change anything by herself. The Bai clan had been destroyed in the end. Leaving behind a few people to deal with the aftermath, Qin Guang and Elder Chen returned to the Taiyang sect. The two of them met Yangzi as soon as possible and reported everything truthfully. At the same time, they also told Yangzi about Bai Jin. Yangzi didn't say much about this. So be it if Bai Jin was still alive. In a single night, the Bai clan, which had once been a powerful quasi-saint clan, had been destroyed just like that. As soon as the news spread, the entire human domain was shaken. Countless people discussed this matter. It couldn't be helped. It had been many years since a quasi-saint clan had been destroyed in the human domain. The news spread like wildfire across the human domain. At this moment, Xiao Chun, who had returned to the sacred palace with Ming Zheng's gang, also heard the news. Moreover, Yin Yangzi had specially sent Elder Chun to Xiao Chun in the sacred palace to tell Xiao Chun the entire story. After learning that the Bai clan was behind this, and that Yin Yangzi had already given Xiao Chun an explanation, Xiao Chun didn't say much about it. However, the bit of resentment in his heart vanished very quickly. After all, the Bai clan was already dead, so the grudges from before were no longer important. Xiao Chun was naturally grateful that Yin Yangzi had swiftly and decisively avenged him. However, while Xiao Chun learned about the whole story, someone else hated Xiao Chun to the core. This person was none other than the only remaining member of the Bai clan, Bai Jin. She was in a beautiful garden in the Xinyuan clan. Xinyuan Baijian had given this garden to Bai Jin. As the publicly acknowledged #1 beauty of the human race, Bai Jin's appearance went without saying. Dressed in a bright red dress, Bai Jin gave off a seductive feeling, as if she could charm all living things. A woman like her was indeed very attractive to men. Unfortunately, Bai Jin's beautiful face was currently filled with intense hatred. In fact, this hatred had even caused Bai Jin's expression to become somewhat ferocious and terrifying. She knew that Yin Yangzi had ordered the destruction of the Bai clan, but Bai Jin also knew that it was all because of Xiao Chun. If it weren't for Xiao Chun, how could the Bai clan have been destroyed? As a result, Bai Jin naturally blamed everything on Xiao Chun, a stranger she had never met. Xiao Chun, I swear that I'm not human if I don't kill you in this lifetime, Bai Jin said viciously as she glared in the direction of the Taiyang sect of Heavenly Yin. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1365. Everyone in the Bai family had been executed because they had tried to kill Xiao Chun. It was easy to imagine the hatred in Bai Jin's heart when she realized that her entire family had been killed. Of course, Bai Jin blamed everything on Xiao Chun because she couldn't, nor did she dare, find trouble with the Taiyang sect. In other words, Bai Jin didn't have the ability to find the Taiyang sect or Yin Yangzi for revenge. Naturally, one had to pick the soft persimmon. Moreover, Bai Jin was not just a good-looking person, but also a smooth and slick person. She wasn't a fool. She knew very well that the only person she could rely on right now was Xinyuan Baijian. Although Xinyuan Baijian doted on her, it was absolutely impossible for him to become enemies with the Yin and Yang sect for her. Even if Xinyuan Baijian agreed, the other experts of the Xinyuan family wouldn't. Therefore, the only way she could take revenge was Xiao Chun. She would use Xiao Chun's blood as a sacrifice to the Bai family. A crazy revenge plan began to form uncontrollably in her heart. Of course, Xiao Chun was naturally unaware of this. He first returned to the sacred palace. After spending a few days in the sacred palace to accompany his parents, Xiao Chun returned to the Taiyang sect. It had only been a few days since he left the Taiyang sect, but Xiao Chun discovered that the atmosphere in the Taiyang sect had changed drastically. Firstly, the Bai family had been removed from the Taiyang sect, and, secondly, the changes in the Sacred Palace faction. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that after this incident, the Sacred Palace faction had become the second largest faction in the Heavenly Yin and Yang sects aside from the main faction. Of course, such a status might not be recognized by everyone. In fact, many people were very unconvinced, but it didn't matter. At the very least, the Sacred Palace faction was in existence that 5 people in the Heavenly Yin and Solar sect dared to provoke at will. Xiao Chun didn't care too much about this change. In fact, if the Bai family hadn't insisted on killing him, Xiao Chun wouldn't have taken the initiative to provoke the Bai family. Unfortunately, the Bai family had made the wrong decision. After returning to the Sun Yang sect, Xiao Chun first went to see Yin Yangzi, and then returned to his peaceful life. Long Yang, Feng Ju, Long Qi, and Long Kuei, there was still no news about the 4 of them. They were probably still training in the human territory. Xiao Chun was not worried about the safety of the 4 of them. Long Yang and Feng Ju's strength could not be underestimated. Even if they encountered any danger, they would be able to deal with it. Moreover, Xiao Chen also believed that Yin Yangzi would definitely protect the two of them in secret. For the time being, Xiao Chen didn't care about the whereabouts of the four of them. However, there was one thing that he hadn't expected. The alliance between the Taiyang sect and the Dragon Clan seemed to have been agreed upon. All that was left was for both sides to announce it to the public. This time, the Dragon Emperor had sent his younger brother, Long Fun, to discuss the alliance with the Taiyang sect. Long Fun and Yin Yangzi had already met during the few days that Xiao Chen had gone to the Hundred Rivers land. It was said that the two of them had a very pleasant conversation, and there were almost no differences between them. The alliance was very smoothly decided. Of course, these were the matters of the higher-ups and had nothing to do with Xiao Chen. Moreover, Xiao Chen didn't know that the reason the alliance had gone so smoothly this time was mostly because the Dragon Clan had intentionally or unintentionally made concessions. As long as it wasn't a matter of principle or something that involved great interests, the Dragon Clan would intentionally or unintentionally make concessions. This was the key to the success of the alliance between the two sides this time. Of course, the reason why the Dragon Clan did this was probably more because of Long Qing. Because the Dragon Emperor doted on Long Qing, he was even willing to suffer a little loss to form an alliance with the Taiyang sect. From this point of view, the Dragon Emperor's love for Long Qing was indeed enviable. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty, but the Dragon Emperor would grant Long Qing's every request. The matter of the alliance had been agreed upon. On this day, Long Fen also came to Xiao Chen's cave and found Long Qing and Xiao Chen. The three of them sat in the pavilion in the garden. Long Fen looked at the two of them and smiled faintly. The matter of the alliance has been agreed upon. It will be announced to the public in a few days. I can't wait to go back. Long Fen was preparing to return to the Dragon Clan. Xiao Chen wasn't surprised by this. However, if Long Fen left, what would happen to Long Yang and the others? Will they go back together? However, he didn't even know where the four of them are now. Long Fen seemed to have seen through Xiao Chen's thoughts. Therefore, before Xiao Chen could open his mouth to ask, Long Fen had already replied with a smile. Long Yang and the others won't go back with me. My two rascally girls must have gone crazy from playing. They sent a voice transmission back and said that they would only return after the human clan's hero assembly. As he spoke, Long Fen's face was filled with helplessness. It had long been rumored that the Dragon Clan was an extremely protective race. Xiao Chen could clearly feel this from the Dragon Emperor and Long Fen. These two brothers were both madly protective of their daughters. There was no need to mention how much the Dragon Emperor doted on Long Qing. Even Long Fen's love for his two crazy girls, Long Kuei and Long Qi, was not much less than the Dragon Emperor's. Therefore, Long Fen did not refuse when Long Kuei and Long Qi wanted to play in the human clan for a while. Of course, this was also based on the current alliance between the Dragon Clan and the Taiyang sect. Long Fen had even specially told Yin Yangzi to take care of his two crazy girls. In the human clan's territory, with the protection of the Taiyang sect, nothing would happen. If they could not even protect 2 or 3 people, the Taiyang sect would really become a laughingstock. There was no need to worry about their safety, so Long Fen naturally followed his 2 crazy girls to go crazy. At this point, Long Fen looked at Long Qing and said, "Qing, are you coming back with me?" "Third uncle, I won't be going back for the time being. I also want to see the human clan's hero assembly." Hearing this, Long Qing replied. Long Qing was also unwilling to go back. However, after this period of time, at least Long Qing had acknowledged the Dragon Emperor and Long Fen. She had also changed the way she addressed them. At least, she no longer felt too distant when she called them third uncle. Seeing the change in Long Qing, Long Fen naturally saw it and nodded slightly when he heard this. "You little fellows, forget it. However, the outside world is not the same as at home. Be careful. If you have any difficulties, you can send a voice transmission back. Your father and I will rush over immediately. Also, take care of your 2 sisters." He did not force Long Qing. After giving some instructions, Long Fen left on the same day. On the third day after Longfen left, the Taiyang sect and the Dragon clan announced the alliance at the same time. When this news came out, the Human clan and the Beast clan were shocked again. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommended. Chapter 1366. The Dragon clan and the Heavenly Yin Yang sect were two of the most powerful forces in their respective races. Although the announcement of the alliance between the two forces did not mention the Human clan and the Beast clan, it did change the relationship between the two races to a certain extent. Judging from the announcement made by the Heavenly Yin Yang sect and the Dragon clan, the alliance this time was limited to the two forces. It had nothing to do with the entire Human clan or the Beast clan. However, this was obviously not the case. The alliance between the two forces eased the relationship between the two races a lot, at least for now. Especially at the border between the two races, the originally strict checks became much more relaxed, especially between the Dragon clan and the Heavenly Yin Yang sect. It could be said that people could travel between the two races at will. The sudden alliance between the Dragon clan and the Heavenly Yin Yang sect had a far-reaching impact. Even the entire central world was shaken. At the same time, the other great sage sects also began to secretly contact each other. The War of the 100 Races was not far away. All the races and major forces were preparing for it. The Dragon clan and the Heavenly Yin Yang sect announced an alliance at this time. The meaning behind this was self-evident. At least the two forces were certain that the alliance was definitely related to the War of the 100 Races. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The announcement of this news caused the central world to instantly become turbulent. Xiao Chun did not pay too much attention to the turmoil in the outside world, nor did he think too much about these things. The current Xiao Chun did not need to think about these things. The great sage should think about these changes in the overall situation, not the younger generation like Xiao Chun. What Xiao Chun should do now was to improve his strength and strive for a good ranking on the Holy Leaderboard. After all, the Holy Leaderboard was the battlefield that young prodigies like them should care about. Yin Yangzi also hoped so for Xiao Chun. Therefore, Yin Yangzi fully supported Xiao Chun's cultivation. It could be said that the entire Heavenly Yin Yang sect was devoted to cultivating Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun could use all the major cultivation mystic realms, and the elixirs and spirit stones needed for cultivation were provided without limit. For a time, Xiao Chun's treatment even surpassed that of Yun Kunyo, the Holy Leaderboard's holy son. Yin Yangzi also hoped that Xiao Chun could improve his strength as soon as possible. After all, Yin Yangzi expected Xiao Chun to reach Long Yang's level. As long as Xiao Chun could successfully reach Long Yang's level, the human race would stand at the top of the 100 races, at least in terms of the younger generation. This way, the human race would be under a lot less pressure. After all, there were only 3 people among the 100 races of the central world who could reach Long Yang's level. From this, one could see how difficult it was to reach Long Yang's level. At the same time, one could see how high his status and influence were. During this period of time, Xiao Chun focused all his cultivation on his martial skills. Compared to other aspects, his martial skills were clearly weaker. After all, both the 9 sifting sword chi and the fish intestine sword finger were only low-grade sacred tier martial skills. Based on the current situation, low-grade sacred tier martial skills were somewhat insufficient in a battle against the Holy Leaderboard. As a result, Xiao Chun wanted to improve his martial skills. As for his cultivation, sword domain, tempered battle body, and heavenly way sword embryo, it would be difficult for him to make any significant progress in a short period of time, so he was not in a hurry. He had grasped a total of 3 mid-grade sacred tier martial skills. They were the absolute Yin footwork, the scorching sun sword technique, and the Moi sword finger. If Xiao Chun could grasp all 3 mid-grade sacred tier martial skills, it would be extremely obvious to his strength. At that time, Xiao Chun's battle prowess would definitely rise to a whole new level. However, mid-grade sacred tier martial skills were very difficult to cultivate. Even with Xiao Chun's talent, it would be difficult for him to reach the entry level of these three martial skills in a short period of time. As the days passed, the situation in the outside world became more and more strange and tense. However, to Xiao Chun, it was extremely peaceful during this period of time. He spent almost every day cultivating these three martial skills. After an entire month, Xiao Chun finally reached the entry level of these three martial skills. Even so, the power of the scorching sun sword technique and the Moi sword finger was no weaker than the 9 sifting sword chi and the fish intestine sword finger. Moreover, there was also the absolute in footwork. Although he was only at the entry level, his speed had already far surpassed the tiger stampede that Xiao Chun had cultivated previously. His speed had increased by at least 40%. Furthermore, over the past month, Xiao Chun had comprehended 2 more laws of nature, which are the law of fire and the law of water, perhaps because he had been practicing the absolute in footwork and the scorching sun swordsmanship. Although they were only first-level laws, the comprehension of the law of water and the law of fire made Xiao Chun secretly happy. The law of water and the law of fire were not to be underestimated. Although they were only first-level laws, if Xiao Chun could continue to comprehend the remaining laws of earth, wood, and gold, then Xiao Chun would have a chance to comprehend the law of 5 elements. The law of 5 elements was a third-level law. It was comparable to the law of yin and yang that Yin Yangzi had comprehended. Its power was far from what the law of gravity could compare to. Of course, it was still too early to say this. After all, Xiao Chun had only comprehended the law of fire and the law of water. Moreover, they were only at the entry level. They were far from being able to integrate the law of 5 elements. However, the matter of the law of 5 elements was not urgent. There would be time in the future. However, the 3 mid-grade sacred tier martial skills, the scorching sun sword technique, gave Xiao Chun a headache. It took him a month to cultivate the 3 martial skills to the entry level. This was achieved with the help of the various cultivation mystic realms of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect. However, after breaking through to the entry level, the cultivation of the 3 martial skills became more and more difficult. Sometimes it would be difficult for him to make any progress even after a few days. This made Xiao Chun very depressed. Of course, this was only possible for Xiao Chun. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to master a mid-level saint-class martial arts technique even after a year, let alone a month, let alone reach the beginner level of the technique. One had to know that mid-grade saint-level martial arts techniques were not as common as cabbages. To be able to cultivate 3 mid-grade saint-level martial arts techniques to the entry level within a month was already an extremely heaven-defying feat. If it were anyone else, they would have been so excited that they would not be able to sleep. No one would be like Xiao Chun, who was still feeling depressed, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1367. To be able to cultivate all 3 Saint-grade, medial-grade martial skills to the entry stage within a month, this speed was enough to make one's jaw drop. One had to know that even Yin Kunyo would not be able to do this. It was not that Xiao Chun was greedy. It was just that time was of the essence. Moreover, although Xiao Chun was a chosen on the saint rankings, Xiao Chun's strength was basically at the bottom of the saint rankings. He could not be compared to the chosen at the top of the saint rankings, let alone Xinyuan Baijian. Xiao Chun was not even Yin Kunyo's opponent right now. It was exactly because of this that Xiao Chun constantly forced himself to improve. After all, as you improved, others improved as well. Especially on the cruel stage of the saint rankings, if you did not improve, you would only be eliminated. If you wanted to catch up to those stronger than you, you had to put in even more effort than them. Only then would you be able to catch up to them. It would be difficult for him to make any major breakthroughs in his martial skills. Xiao Chun could clearly sense that he would need time to accumulate if he wanted to break through to the initial realm of the 3 Saint-tier martial skills. He had already completed his previous breakthrough, so he could only rely on time. It was indeed difficult for him to make any major breakthroughs in a short period of time. His cultivation had fallen into a state of calmness. Whether it was his cultivation, sword domain, power of law, or martial skills, they had all reached a bottleneck. If he continued to cultivate bitterly in seclusion at this time, it would not be worth it. Instead, it would be counterproductive. After thinking this through, Xiao Chun suppressed his restlessness. To be honest, Xiao Qin's rate of improvement could be described as breathtaking since he had come to the central world. Even Long Yang probably did not progress as fast as Xiao Chun. In just a few short years, Xiao Chun had undergone a complete transformation. His cultivation, sword domain, force of laws, and martial skills had all improved by leaps and bounds. After experiencing such rapid improvement, Xiao Chun needed time to settle down and digest the benefits of his improvement. At the same time, he needed time to accumulate and consolidate his foundation. On this day, Xiao Chun did not cultivate. Instead, he sat in the courtyard and chatted with Qin Shuru and the other girls. The four girls had been cultivating extremely diligently during this period of time, so it was rare for everyone to be able to relax. Looks like it's time to relax. Even a man made of iron can't take it if he always works so hard, Xiao Chun murmured softly while being surrounded by the four girls. Since it was difficult for him to make any breakthroughs in a short period of time, Xiao Chun planned to simply relax for a period of time. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gu Lingyao immediately said excitedly, "Okay, since we came to the central world, my husband has not played with us properly. There are many places in the central world that we want to go but haven't been to yet." Previously, Xiao Chun had been cultivating desperately, so the four girls did not want to disturb Xiao Chun, so they had very little time together. Now that Xiao Chun had taken the initiative to say this, the four girls were naturally happy. Even Tian Yu was beaming with joy at this time. In the hearts of the four girls, their own cultivation could only be ranked second. The first must be Xiao Chun. Compared to cultivation, the four girls were more willing to stay with Xiao Chun. However, this was obviously impossible, at least for now. Seeing the four girls so happy, Xiao Chun also smiled gently and said, "Okay, then let's go out for a walk and see the beautiful scenery of the central world." Xiao Chun also felt that he had wronged the four girls many times. Although the four girls had never complained in front of him, Xiao Chun knew that as a husband, he had given the four girls too little. Sometimes, Xiao Chun even felt that with the four girls' conditions, it would be much better for them to marry an ordinary person than him. At the very least, if she were to marry an ordinary person, she wouldn't have to spend more time with him than she did with him, and she would have to face danger at all times. When Xiao Chun said that he wanted to go out and have fun, the four girls were very happy. At this time, a sound transmission talisman fell beside Xiao Chun. It was a small golden ball of light, and from the ball of light, Long Yang's voice slowly sounded. His tone was filled with a strong sense of mockery. "Brother Xiao Chun, we are in trouble in your territory. I am being bullied here, and you can't just ignore it. I am now at the 100 Flowers Manor. You have to come quickly. Otherwise, I can't do anything. I might be beaten to death." Long Yang's voice slowly sounded. But before he could finish, the two crazy girls, Long Qi and Long Kuei, immediately snatched the right to speak and said angrily, "Xiao Chun, we are being bullied. Come quickly. I'm going to tear down this 100 Flowers Manor." Humph. Just by listening to their words, Xiao Chun could imagine the angry faces of the two sisters. After saying that, the sound transmission talisman disappeared. Hearing this, Xiao Chun could not help but laugh. Long Yang was definitely lying. With his strength, a mere 100 Flowers Manor would definitely not be able to stop him. However, Long Yang probably had no intention of making a move. Xiao Chun, who knew his character well, knew that this guy was exactly the same as Chunyu. If he could not make a move, he would definitely not make a move. If he could only use 10% of his strength, he would definitely not use 30% of his strength. I have heard of the 100 Flowers Manor. It is not far from the Yin-Sun sect. It is a secondary saint power. However, the most famous thing about the 100 Flowers Manor is not its strength, but its scenery. It is said that the Hundred Flowers Manor is planted with almost all the flowers in the world. The scenery is extremely beautiful, and it is a sacred place. Many of the younger generation of the human race view it as a place of love. At this time, Hundred Flowers Fairy said with a smile, "Hundred Flowers Manor, Hundred Flowers Fairy. Hee, Sister Hundred Flowers, this Hundred Flowers Manor is really fated with you. Why don't you ask your husband to think of a way to give the Hundred Flowers Manor to you directly?" Hearing Hundred Flowers Fairy's words, Gu Lingyao joked. Hearing this, Hundred Flowers Fairy's face turned slightly red. "You are so talkative. Hundred Flowers Manor, Hundred Flowers Fairy." They were indeed very compatible. Seeing the longing in Hundred Flowers Fairy's eyes, Xiao Chun knew that she also wanted to go to the Hundred Flowers Manor to take a look. After all, that was the most famous and beautiful place in the human race territory. Originally, he wanted to relax. In another month's time, the human race hero assembly would begin. At that time, there would be endless troubles. Therefore, without thinking too much, Xiao Chun decided, if that's the case, then let's go to the Hundred Flowers Manor to take a look. We can also take a look at who could force our young Master Long Yang to such a state. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1368. Wonderful. Read for free without pop-up window. To be able to cultivate all three Saint grade, medial grade martial skills to the entry stage in a single month, this speed was enough to make one's jaw drop. One had to know that even Yin Kunyo would not be able to do this. It wasn't that Xiao Chun was greedy. It was just that time was of the essence. Moreover, although Xiao Chun was now chosen on the Saint rankings, Xiao Chun's strength was basically at the bottom of the Saint rankings. He couldn't be compared to the chosen at the top of the Saint rankings at all, let alone Xianyuan Baijian. Xiao Chun wasn't even a match for Yin Kunyo right now. It was precisely because of this that Xiao Chun constantly forced himself to improve. It had to be known that others were also improving while you were improving. Especially on the cruel stage of the Saint rankings, if you didn't improve, you could only wait to be eliminated. If you wanted to catch up to those who were stronger than you could only put in more effort than them. Only then would you be able to catch up to them. It would be difficult for him to make any major breakthroughs in his martial skills. Xiao Chun could clearly sense that he would need time to accumulate if he wanted to break through to the initial stage of the three Saint-tier mid-grade martial skills. The previous breakthrough had already been completed, so he could only rely on the accumulation of time. It was indeed difficult for him to make any major breakthroughs in a short period of time. His cultivation had fallen into a state of calmness. Whether it was his cultivation, sword domain, strength of laws, or martial skills, they had all reached a bottleneck. If he still went into seclusion and cultivated bitterly at this time, it wouldn't be worth it. Instead, it would be counterproductive. After thinking this through, Xiao Chun calmed his somewhat restless heart. To be honest, ever since Xiao Chun came to the Central World, his rate of improvement could be described as amazing. Even Long Yang probably didn't progress as fast as Xiao Chun. In just a few short years, Xiao Chun could be said to have completed an all-round transformation. His cultivation, sword domain, strength of laws, and martial skills had all improved by leaps and bounds. After experiencing such rapid improvement, Xiao Chun needed time to settle down and digest the benefits brought by these improvements. At the same time, he also needed a certain amount of time to accumulate and consolidate his foundation. On this day, Xiao Chun didn't cultivate. Instead, he sat in the courtyard and chatted with Qin Shu and the other three girls. The four girls had been extremely diligent in their cultivation during this period of time, so it was rare for everyone to relax. Looks like it's time to relax. Even a person made of iron can't take it if they always work so hard, Xiao Chun murmured softly while being surrounded by the fours. Since it was impossible for him to make any more breakthroughs in a short period of time, Xiao Chun decided to take a break for a while. Firstly, he wanted to adjust his state of mind. Secondly, he wanted to give himself some time to accumulate and settle down. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Gu Lingyao immediately said excitedly. Okay, since we came to the central world, our husband hasn't played with us properly. There are many places in the central world that we want to go, but haven't been to yet. Previously, Xiao Chun was desperately cultivating. The four girls didn't want to disturb Xiao Chun, so they didn't have much time together. Now that Xiao Chun took the initiative to say this, the four girls were naturally happy. Even Tian Yu was beaming with joy at this time. In the hearts of the four girls, their own cultivation could only be ranked second. The first must be Xiao Chun. Compared to cultivation, the four girls were more willing to stay with Xiao Chun. But obviously, this was impossible, at least for now. Seeing the four girls so happy, Xiao Chun also smiled gently and said, Okay, then let's go out for a walk and see the beautiful scenery of the central world. Xiao Chun also felt that he had wronged the four girls many times. Although the four girls had never complained in front of him, he knew that as a husband, he had given the four girls too little. Sometimes, Xiao Chun even felt that with the four girls' conditions, it would be much better for them to marry an ordinary person than him. At the very least, if she were to marry an ordinary person, she wouldn't have to spend more time with him than she did with him, and she would have to face danger at all times. When Xiao Chun said that he wanted to go out and have fun, the four girls were overjoyed. At this time, a sound transmission talisman fell beside Xiao Chun. It was a small golden ball of light, and from the ball of light, Long Yang's voice slowly sounded. His tone was filled with a strong sense of mockery. Brother Xiao Chun, we're in trouble in your territory. I'm being bullied here, and you can't just ignore it. I'm at 100 Flowers Manor right now, so you better hurry over. Otherwise, I won't be able to do anything and might get beaten to death. Long Yang's voice slowly sounded. But before he could finish, the two crazy girls, Long Qi and Long Kuei, snatched the right to speak and said angrily, Xiao Chun, we're being bullied. Come quickly, I want to tear down this 100 Flowers Manor. Humph. Just by listening to their words, Xiao Chun could imagine the angry faces of the two sisters. After saying that, the sound transmission talisman disappeared. Hearing this, Xiao Chun couldn't help but laugh. Long Yang was definitely lying. With his strength, a mere 100 Flowers Manor would definitely not be able to stop him. However, Long Yang probably had no intention of making a move. Xiao Chun, who knew his character well, knew that this guy was exactly the same as Chunyu. If he could avoid making a move, he would definitely not make a move. If he could only use 10% of his strength, he would definitely not use 30% of his strength. I have heard of the 100 Flowers Manor. It is not far from the Yin Sun sect. It is a quasi-saint power. However, the 100 Flowers Manor is not famous for its strength, but for its scenery. It is said that the 100 Flowers Manor is planted with almost all the flowers in the world. The scenery is extremely beautiful, and it is a sacred place. Many of the younger generation of the human race view it as a place of love. At this time, 100 Flowers Fairy said with a light smile, 100 Flowers Manor, 100 Flowers Fairy. Sister 100 Flowers, this 100 Flowers Manor is really fated with you. Why don't you ask your husband to think of a way to give the 100 Flowers Manor to you directly? Hearing 100 Flowers Fairy's words, Gu Lingyao joked. Hearing this, 100 Flowers Fairy's face turned slightly red. You are so talkative. 100 Flowers Manor, 100 Flowers Fairy. They were indeed very compatible. Seeing the longing in 100 Flowers Fairy's eyes, Xiao Chun knew that she also wanted to go to the 100 Flowers Manor to take a look. After all, that was the most famous and beautiful place in the human race territory. Originally, he wanted to relax. In another month's time, the human race hero assembly would begin. At that time, there would be endless trouble. Therefore, without thinking too much, Xiao Chun directly decided, if that's the case, then let's go to the 100 Flowers Manor to take a look. We can also take a look at who could force our young master Long Yang to such a state. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1369. Hua Yin did not believe that Long Qi and Long Kuei would know Xiao Chun. Watching the two ladies arguing with Hua Yin, Long Yang, who was not far away, was drinking his wine with a faint smile on his face, as if he was not worried that Huaoyan would do anything to Long Kuei and Long Qi. Feng Zhu said angrily when he saw Long Yang's calm expression. Is this how you act as an elder brother? Your sister is being bullied and you don't intend to do anything? Feng Zhu was unhappy that Long Yang was watching the show. However, Long Yang chuckled and said, I don't need to do anything. Let's wait for Brother Xiao Chun. You. Hearing this, Feng Zhu was furious, but before he could speak, Long Yang interrupted him with an indifferent tone. The scenery here is so beautiful. Brother Xiao Chun should come and take a look. Hua Wushuang is also in the 100 Flowers Manor. Hua Wushuang was Hua Wuyan's elder brother and also the son of the 100 Flowers Manor Lord. However, compared to Hua Wuyan, Hua Wushuang was much more famous in the human race. Logically speaking, since Hua Wushuang was the eldest son, he should be the one to inherit the 100 Flowers Manor. However, Hua Wushuang gave up and passed the position of the young manor lord to his younger brother, Hua Wuyan. Then, Hua Wushuang joined the Clear Sky Alliance. In just a few years, Hua Wushuang became the Holy Son and ranked 79th on the Holy Rankings. Feng Zhu wasn't dumb when he heard Long Yang mention Hua Wushuang. You purposely lured Xiao Chun here. You wanted to fight? Hee, our palace master Feng Zhu is smart. Brother Xiao Chen's ranking on the Holy Rankings is indeed too low. After this period of cultivation, Brother Xiao Chen's strength should be enough to fight with Hua Wushuang. Long Yang didn't intend to hide the truth from Feng Zhu. He smiled and admitted Feng Zhu's guess. Long Yang had spent so much effort to lure Xiao Chun to fight with Hua Wushuang. Hearing Long Yang's words, Feng Zhu did not say anything more. He finished the wine in his cup in one gulp, then stood up and whispered softly. There's not much time left. However, Feng Zhu didn't refute him at all. Unaware of Long Yang's thoughts, Xiao Chun was currently leading Qin Shu and the other 3 girls towards 100 Flowers Manor. Along the way, the 4 of them were not in a hurry. Instead, they took about 3 days to arrive at 100 Flowers Manor. Looking from afar, the entire mountain range was filled with all kinds of flowers. It was like a sea of flowers. Faced with the beautiful scenery in front of them, Qin Shu and the other girls were immediately attracted. Even Xiao Chun could not help but sigh in her heart. This 100 Flowers Manor was indeed a paradise. It was no wonder that the scenery alone could attract so many experts to join and work for it. Xiao Chun was not in a hurry to find Long Yang and the other 3 girls. Anyway, he was not worried about their safety. Moreover, attracted by the beautiful scenery in front of them, Qin Shu and the other girls did not care about anything else. They immediately stepped into the sea of flowers. Surrounded by beautiful and colorful flowers, the 4 girls were in a good mood as they stood in the sea of flowers. Looking at the 4 girls and the sea of flowers complementing each other, beautiful women matched with fresh flowers. To Xiao Chun, this was a good picture. After some simple sightseeing, Xiao Chun and the others finally arrived at the side courtyard where Long Yang and the other 3 were staying. As soon as they entered, Xiao Chun was stopped by the 2 sisters, Long Qi and Long Kuei, who were both fuming with rage. The 2 girls looked angrily at Xiao Chun and said, Xiao Chun, I don't care. You must help us. I want to tear down this 100 Flowers Manor. For 3 days in a row, Hua Wuyan came almost every day. If Long Qi and Long Kuei did not know that he was from the Dragon Clan, Hua Wuyan would have already taken action. Being a member of the Dragon Clan, coupled with the alliance between the Heavenly Note Extreme Yang sect and the Dragon Clan, Hua Wuyan did not dare to lay a hand on the 2 women. However, he could not swallow the anger in his heart. Therefore, Hua Wuyan would come looking for trouble whenever he could. Regarding this, Long Yang did not say a word. He just said whatever was asked and waited for Xiao Chun to come and settle it himself. This was his territory. Long Kuei and Long Qi had no choice but to suppress the anger in their hearts and wait for Xiao Chun to come. Now that they saw Xiao Chun, they naturally exploded all the anger in their hearts. The moment they opened their mouths, They wanted to tear down the 100 Flowers Manor. Hearing this, Xiao Chun could only smile helplessly. After comforting the two girls, Xiao Chun came in front of Long Yang and asked him curiously, "I say, Brother Long Yang, what are you up to this time?" With Long Yang's identity, he could easily settle this matter, but he did not do anything. Xiao Chun thought that he must be up to something. Facing Xiao Chen's question, Long Yang smiled faintly and said, "Nothing much. It's just that the scenery here is very beautiful, and I can't help but want Brother Xiao Chun to come and enjoy it together. It's better to enjoy it together than to enjoy it alone." Long Yang's answer was obviously not good for Xiao Chun. This guy looked very lazy, but he had many tricks up his sleeve. If one did not pay attention, one would fall into his trap. Of course, Xiao Chun did not think that Long Yang would harm him. He had a certain understanding of Long Yang's character. This guy was lazy, but he was not a bad person. At least, he was very good to his friends. Thinking of this, Xiao Chun did not say anything else. He consciously sat down beside Long Yang and poured himself a cup of wine and drank it. Long Yang was the third holy son on the saint rankings. Even Xianyuan Baijian would feel great pressure in front of him. However, Xiao Chun was completely different. When he was with Long Yang, Xiao Chun did not feel any pressure at all. Looking at Xiao Chun beside him, Long Yang's eyes flashed with a smile. Not long after Xiao Chun and the others arrived, Hua Wuyin came again. After knowing Long Kuei and Long Qi's identity, Hua Wuyin had given up on the idea of taking action. So, he basically came alone for the past few days. Striding into the courtyard, Hua Wuyin immediately said sarcastically to Long Qi and Long Kuei, "I say, how long are the two of you going to stay here for? You should at least scram out of my 100 Flowers Manor by now." "Oof, Hua Wuyin, you came at the right time. Today, I'll let you see whether we know Xiao Chun or not." Hearing this, Long Kuei replied without backing down. Xiao Chun was here. In Long Kuei's opinion, it was time to teach Hua Wuyin a lesson. After saying that, Long Kuei turned her gaze to Xiao Chun, who was beside Long Yang. Facing Long Kuei's gaze, Xiao Chun smiled helplessly. At the same time, Hua Wuyin naturally looked over. When he saw Xiao Chun, Hua Wuyin was obviously stunned. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1370. With regards to Xiao Chun, who was now in the limelight, many of the powerhouses in the human territories had secretly gathered information about him, and the 100 Flowers Manor was no exception. They had even specially ordered someone to draw a portrait of Xiao Chun. As the young manor lord of the 100 Flowers Manor, Hua Wuyin had naturally seen the portrait of Xiao Chun. Hence, when he first saw Xiao Chun, Hua Wuyin had already confirmed Xiao Chun's identity. He had not expected that it was really Xiao Chun, and his face was slightly stunned. At the same time, Xiao Chun glanced at Long Yang before he stood up and came before Hua Wuyin, his face calm as he said, "The 100 Flowers Manor is a sacred place, and I think that young Manor Lord Hua would not wish to see the scenery of the 100 Flowers Manor destroyed. It is better to squash enmity rather than keep it alive. Young Manor Lord, let's settle this matter here." He did not immediately start a fight. After all, from Xiao Chun's point of view, the conflict between Hua Wuyin and Long Qi Long Kuei was just a matter of their profligate nature, and neither side was willing to back down. It wasn't a life-and-death feud, and it couldn't even be called a grudge. Moreover, although Hua Wuyin came to find trouble with him almost every day, he had never laid a hand on Long Kuei or Long Qi. It was nothing more than a verbal argument. With such a matter, Xiao Chun really did not understand why Long Yang had called him over. With Long Yang's status, he could easily settle this matter with just a word. However, at that moment, as Xiao Chun's back was facing Long Yang, he did not see that when Xiao Chun stood up, Long Yang's face broke into a smile. That smile looked like a happy smile of someone who had succeeded in some scheme. Revealing a strange smile, at the same time, an indifferent voice sounded from outside the courtyard. "Oh, is the chosen Saint Xiao Chun so magnanimous?" Along with the voice, A young man wearing a long robe with 100 flowers walked into the courtyard with large strides. The young man looked to be about the same age as Xiao Chun. His eyebrows were somewhat similar to Hua Wuyan's. His appearance could be considered handsome, but his flowery robe gave off an indescribable sense of incongruity. After all, a man rarely wore such gaudy clothes. Before Xiao Chun could say anything about the sudden appearance of the young man, Hua Wuyan took the lead and called out, "Brother." That's right. This person was Hua Wuyan's elder brother, Hua Wushuang. He was a disciple of the Clear Sky Alliance and ranked 79th on the saint ranking. Hua Wushuang's appearance caused the smile in Long Yang's eyes to deepen. Facing his brother, Hua Wushuang only nodded his head slightly. Immediately after, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He looked at Long Yang and Feng Zhu and said indifferently, "Young Master Long Yang, Princess Feng Zhu, your presence brings light to my 100 flowers manor." He recognized Long Yang and Feng Zhu at a glance. Hearing this, Feng Zhu ignored him while Long Yang smiled and said, "You're too kind, Mr. Hua." Long Yang and Feng Zhu were not surprised by Hua Wushuang's appearance. Similarly, Hua Wushuang was not surprised by Long Yang and Feng Zhu's appearance. After a simple greeting, Hua Wushuang's gaze fell on Xiao Chun. There was a look of curiosity in his eyes as he sized up Xiao Chun. After a while, Hua Wushuang spoke. "Xiao Chun, you first defeated Long Yu from the Dragon Tribe and then killed by Chiron. Recently, you've been in the limelight as one of the saints on the saint ranking." Interesting. Hua Wushuang was extremely interested in Xiao Chun. This was not because Hua Wushuang had the same hobby as his brother, but because Hua Wushuang viewed combat as his life. If one were to ask who was the most combative among the saints on the saint ranking, it would definitely be Hua Wushuang. No one would disagree with this. Hua Wushuang, who looked like a gentleman, was actually a battle maniac. Those who did not know Hua Wushuang would definitely not believe this. However, this was the truth. If one were to ask how Hua Wushuang had become a saint on the saint ranking, it would be by fighting his way up. Ever since he had entered the Haotian Alliance, Hua Wushuang had been constantly challenging people who were stronger than him. In the end, when he had entered the saint ranking, he had practically defeated everyone on the saint ranking. Hua Wushuang had even challenged Xinyuan Baijian before. However, the outcome was self-evident. Hua Wushuang paled in comparison. However, other than Xinyuan Baijian, Bai Chiron, Yin Kunyo, and the other saints on the saint ranking had all fought with Hua Wushuang before. It could be said that Hua Wushuang would definitely take the initiative to challenge an opponent who was on par with him. Furthermore, he would not allow anyone to refuse. Long Yang knew that Hua Wushuang was such a battle maniac. This was why he had lured Xiao Chun here. As long as Xiao Chun came, there would definitely be a battle between him and Hua Wushuang. Long Yang could be said to be paving the way for Xiao Chun. He hoped that Xiao Chun could quickly raise his ranking on the saint ranking. However, Xiao Chun clearly did not know the reason. As expected, after seeing Xiao Chun, Hua Wushuang did not wait for Xiao Chun's reply and immediately spoke in a deep voice. "Since we are fated to meet, Xiao Chun, let's have a battle. I will arrange the location of the battle." After speaking, Hua Wushuang did not give Xiao Chun a chance to reply and turn around to leave. Seeing this, Hua Wen also followed closely behind his brother. It seemed like he was very afraid of Hua Wushuang. The two brothers left the courtyard one after the other. Before they left, Hua Wushuang did not stop walking and said, "I will send someone to inform you when the time comes. Xiao Chun, stay in my 100 flowers manor for the time being. You can also bring your 4 wives to enjoy the beautiful scenery of my 100 flowers manor." As they spoke, Hua Wushuang and Hua Wushuang quickly disappeared from the courtyard. Until Hua Wushuang left, Xiao Chun did not say a single word. This fellow made his own decision and did not even give anyone a chance to refuse. Furthermore, from Hua Wushuang's tone, it seemed like he was going to put Xiao Chun under house arrest. Before the battle between the two of them, Xiao Chun could not leave the 100 flowers manor. Xiao Chun was not concerned about Hua Wushuang's extremely overbearing actions. Instead, he suddenly thought of Long Yang. Turning his head to look at Long Yang, Xiao Chun had a feeling that this was all planned by Long Yang. He clearly knew that Hua Wuchuang was like this, but he still lured Xiao Chun here. His goal was to let Xiao Chun fight with Hua Wuchuang. It had to be said that Xiao Chen's guess was completely correct. However, when faced with Xiao Chen's gaze, Long Yang stood up and smiled. Brother Xiao Chun, Hua Wuchuang is ranked 79 on the Saint ranking. For the current you, he is a good opponent. Do your best. If you defeat him, your ranking on the Saint ranking will increase by quite a bit. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1371. Long Yang wasn't surprised by Xiao Chen's confusion and replied frankly. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun asked helplessly, Brother Long Yang, what do you mean by this? Long Yang knew that Hua Wuchuang had such a personality, yet he still tricked Xiao Chun into coming to the 100 Flowers Manor. Could it be that he really wanted Xiao Chun to fight with Hua Wuchuang? Staring at Long Yang seemed to be defeated by Xiao Chen's stare. He smiled as if he had lost count. All right. Brother Xiao Chun, you don't have to look at me like that. I'll tell you. Long Yang definitely had his reasons for doing so, and Xiao Chun wanted a reason. Soon after, the group of people sat down in the hall of the courtyard, including Qin Shiru and the other two ladies. Once everyone was seated, Long Yang spoke bluntly. The world only knows that there will always be 108 spots on the saint rankings. Once a new saint is promoted, the person ranked at the bottom will naturally be eliminated. However, very few people know that the 108 positions on the saint ranking aren't just a simple number. They represent the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends. 36 heavenly spirits and 72 earthly fiends. There are exactly 108 of them, and the chosen on the saint ranking just so happens to represent these heavenly spirits and earthly fiends. Therefore, the biggest difference on the saint ranking is actually not the ranking of the person, but the division of the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends. Let's put it this way. The top 36 people on the saint ranking represent the 36 heavenly spirits. The gap between them and the remaining chosen on the saint ranking, who represent the 72 earthly fiends, is huge. Of course, if you can surpass the 36 heavenly spirits, you will naturally obtain unexpected benefits. What I want to tell Brother Xiao Chun today is to become one of the 36 heavenly spirits on the saint ranking as soon as possible. This is extremely meaningful to Brother Xiao Chun. The number 108 on the saint ranking was not a random number. It represented the 36 heavenly stars and 72 earthly fiends. According to Long Yang, every saint on the saint ranking corresponded to a heavenly star and earthly fiend. Just like Long Yang, he corresponded to the knowledge star of the 36 heavenly spirits, and Feng Zhu corresponded to the majestic star of the 36 heavenly spirits. Just like Xianyuan Baijian corresponded to the noble star of the 36 heavenly spirits. As for Xiao Chun, she was currently ranked 93rd, corresponding to the prisoner star of the 72 earthly fiends. As for that ranked 79th, Hua Wuchuang, she corresponded to the speed star of the 72 earthly fiends. Long Yang's intention was very simple. He hoped that Xiao Chun could break away from the 72 earthly fiends as soon as possible and successfully become one of the 36 heaven stars. That way, Xiao Chun would be able to obtain a great opportunity. He explained to Xiao Chun in detail about the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends on the saint ranking. These were all secrets that very few people knew about. Of course, for those who were not saints on the saint ranking, these matters were not important, so naturally, no one would spread them out. However, for ordinary cultivators, these matters were not important, but for saints on the saint ranking, the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends were incomparably important. There were many things involved. After stating his purpose, Long Yang did not tell Xiao Chun what benefits he could obtain after becoming one of the 36 heavenly spirits. Regarding this, Xiao Chun did not insist on getting to the bottom of it. In the end, he only asked one question. Then how much time do I have? The shortest is 2 years, the most 3 years. Long Yang replied. At most 3 years' time, Xiao Chun had to become one of the 36 heavenly spirits on the saint ranking. Otherwise, he could only miss out on this great opportunity. Time was very tight. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled bitterly and helplessly. In that case, I have to defeat Hua Wushuang this time. Hua Wushuang is not important. Brother Xiao Chun still has many people to challenge. The 36 heavenly spirits means that Brother Xiao Chun has to enter the top 36 of the saint ranking. After defeating Hua Wushuang, Brother Xiao Chun will have to defeat other opponents at the Human Race Hero Gathering. Furthermore, it's not just the human race. If you want to be one of the 36 heavenly spirits in 3 years' time, Brother Xiao Chun will have to go to the territories of other races and challenge their saints on the saint ranking, Long Yang said indifferently. It seemed like he had already chosen the most suitable challenge route for Xiao Chun. This was normal. After all, Long Yang's understanding of the saints on the saint ranking was definitely better than Xiao Chen's. Having his help in choosing opponents was also a good thing for Xiao Chun. As he learned more about the saint ranking, Xiao Chun became more and more curious. What was the purpose of the Heavenly Ways saint ranking? Was it just to create a ranking for the younger generation in the Central World? It probably wasn't as simple as that. If that was the case, why did they have to create the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends? Moreover, if it was just to create a ranking for the younger generation, why didn't the Central World have other rankings? For example, the saint ranking, the quasi-saint ranking, the great saint ranking, and so on. Unfortunately, there was no such ranking. There was only one saint ranking in the entire Central World. In that case, the saint ranking was probably not as simple as it seemed on the surface. However, this was still too far away for Xiao Chun right now. For the time being, Xiao Chun did not have to think about it. The most important thing for Xiao Chun right now was to become one of the 36 heavenly spirits as soon as possible. After explaining to Xiao Chun about the Tiangang and Disha, Xiao Chun stayed in the 100 Flowers Manor for the next few days. Every day, he accompanied Qin Shiru and the other 3 girls to enjoy the flowers and play. At the same time, he quietly waited for news from Hua Wushuang. In just 3 days, news of Hua Wushuang's battle with Xiao Chun spread from the 100 Flowers Manor. As soon as the news came out, it naturally attracted the attention of countless people. After all, this was a battle between the saints of the saint ranking. Moreover, Xiao Chun had been in the limelight recently. It could be said that he was the most popular person among the younger generation of the human race. Originally, they thought that Xiao Chun would remain silent for a period of time after killing Bai Chiron. However, no one had expected that news of Xiao Chen's battle with Hua Wushuang would spread again after such a short period of time. According to the 100 Flowers Manor, the battle would begin in 5 days. It would be held in the 100 Flowers Manor's martial arts field. Anyone could come and watch the battle. 5 days later, at the 100 Flowers Manor, after the battle between Hua Wushuang and Xiao Chun, countless people rushed to the 100 Flowers Manor from all directions. Those warriors who were closer to the 100 Flowers Manor only took a day to arrive. For a moment, the entire 100 Flowers Manor could be said to be filled with a sea of people. And this was only the beginning. There were more people on the way. Xiao Chun had naturally heard about the commotion Hua Wushuang had caused. However, he was unable to stop her, so he simply allowed Hua Wushuang to spread the news herself, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1372. Xianyuan Baijian sat in the main seat of the hall in a simple courtyard of the Xianyuan clan. In front of him, a guard of the Xianyuan clan was respectfully looking at the guard with an indifferent gaze. Xianyuan Baijian asked indifferently, Xiao Chun is going to fight that madwoman Hua Wushuang. Because Hua Wushuang treated battle as if her life depended on it. Many people in the younger generation of the human race called her a madwoman. Xianyuan Baijian was no exception. Of course, although Hua Wushuang was crazy, Xinyuan Baijian didn't care at all. What he cared about was Xiao Chun. Xinyuan Baijian had suffered greatly at the hands of Long Yang in the Yin and Yang sect. He felt utterly humiliated. In the end, it was his ancestor, Xinyuan Wudi, who saved him. Naturally, Xinyuan Baijian blamed Xiao Chun for something so humiliating. So, when he heard that Xiao Chun was going to fight Hua Wushuang, Xinyuan Baijian paid special attention to it. Upon hearing Xinyuan Baijian's words, the guard respectfully replied, "Yes, the news came from Hundred Flowers Manor, and Xiao Chun is currently in Hundred Flowers Manor." "Heh, if that's the case, then keep a close eye on it. Report to me immediately if there are any results." Xinyuan Baijian sneered and waved his hand, indicating for the guard to leave. After that guard left, a red silhouette walked into the hall. That person was none other than Xinyuan Baijian's most beloved woman, Bai Jin. She was the only member of the Bai clan who was still alive in this world. Bai Jin entered the hall. Seeing that, Xinyuan Baijian smiled faintly and very naturally took her into his arms. Smelling her refreshing fragrance, Xinyuan Baijian seemed to be talking to himself. "Subordinate, your health hasn't been good recently. How come you have the time to come here?" With Xinyuan Baijian's status, Bai Jin naturally didn't have the qualifications to live with him. In fact, Xinyuan Baijian had his own cave residence. As for his women, they each had their own courtyard. Furthermore, there were many servants in charge of serving them. Under normal circumstances, without Xinyuan Baijian's permission, these women would not be able to enter Xinyuan Baijian's abode without permission. However, Bai Jin was an exception. Xinyuan Baijian had once said that Bai Jin could freely enter and exit his abode at any time. From this, one could see how much Xinyuan Baijian liked Bai Jin. Originally, Bai Jin was very sad because of the Bai family's matters. However, when she heard that Xiao Chun was going to fight with Hua Wushuang today, Bai Jin immediately thought of an opportunity to get rid of Xiao Chun. That was to let Hua Wushuang kill Xiao Chun in the arena. In this way, even the Heavenly Note Solar Sect would have nothing to say. After all, it was a fair fight. Who could they blame if their skills were inferior? Moreover, Hua Wushuang was also a member of the younger generation. If she killed Xiao Chun, she wouldn't have to worry about being punished by the Heavenly Way. However, although Bai Jin had such thoughts, with her status, she clearly couldn't order Hua Wushuang around. Moreover, Hua Wushuang wouldn't even bother with Bai Jin. This fellow was a blockhead who only knew how to fight and had no interest in women. She simply couldn't make Hua Wushuang listen to her. Therefore, Bai Jin's first thought was Xinyuan Baijian. With his status as the first holy son of the human race, if Xinyuan Baijian spoke, Hua Wushuang might still listen. Therefore, Bai Jin came. Obediently lying in Xinyuan Baijian's embrace, Bai Jin said sweetly, "Husband, you should know about my Bai family's matters. Yes, I know you want revenge. However, now isn't the time. I promise you that as soon as I have the chance, I will personally kill Xiao Chun and take his dog head to avenge your Bai family," Xinyuan Baijian said indifferently. It could be said that the Bai family's matters were already known by everyone. Naturally, Xinyuan Baijian knew. Hearing his words, Bai Jin pretended to be sad. "Thank you, husband. However, my Bai family was exterminated because of Xiao Chun. There's a chance right now. Jiner asks husband to help me." Bai Jin had a pitiful appearance. However, Xinyuan Baijian had already guessed what she wanted to say. He replied expressionlessly, "You want me to contact Hua Wushuang? Have him directly take Xiao Chen's life on the stage?" "Husband, you're wise. Now that Xiao Chun has recklessly challenged Hua Wushuang to a battle, this is the best opportunity. Moreover, if you kill Xiao Chun on the stage, even the Taiyang sect won't be able to say anything. That way, you'll be able to save yourself a lot of trouble," said Bai Jin. It had to be said that Bai Jin was quite intelligent. She wasn't just a pretty face. Unfortunately, although Bai Jin was smart, she was clearly inexperienced. As someone who had always lived under Xinyuan Baijian's protection, she didn't understand what was happening in the outside world, nor did she know about the relationships between the chosen on the saint rankings. Bai Jin only thought that as the first chosen of the human race, Hua Wushuang wouldn't refuse if Xianyuan Baijian asked. But she obviously hadn't expected that anyone who could become a holy prince on the saint rankings would be a proud and arrogant person. Hua Wushuang wasn't a member of the Xianyuan clan, so it was impossible for her to listen to Xianyuan Baijian's orders. Hua Wushuang wasn't related to Xianyuan Baijian at all. Even Bai Qiran and Yin Kunyo were both members of the Taiyang sect, but Bai Qiran had never listened to Yin Kunyo's orders. No chosen on the saint rankings would be willing to live under someone else's roof unless they belonged to the same power. Otherwise, it was basically impossible for them to be ordered around. Thus, Xianyuan Baijian's face sank slightly when he heard Bai Jin's words. He released his grip and spoke indifferently. You underestimate Xiao Chun too much. Do you think Hua Wushuang will definitely be able to defeat Xiao Chun? All right, even if Hua Wushuang can win, why do you think Hua Wushuang will listen to my orders? He's a madman, and he's not a member of the Xianyuan clan. Hua Wushuang will probably turn a deaf ear to my words. So, don't even think about using Hua Wushuang to kill Xiao Chun. Moreover, I remember saying that I like obedient women. Since I've promised to avenge you, I'll definitely do it. As for you, all you need to do is wait patiently. All right, you can leave. In the future, you don't need to come here without my permission. Bai Jin's self-righteousness caused Xianyuan Baijian to feel a trace of displeasure. He directly pushed Bai Jin out of his embrace and said indifferently. He even took back Bai Jin's right to enter his cave as she wished. In the future, without Xianyuan Baijian's permission, Bai Jin would no longer be able to enter Xianyuan Baijian's cave. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 1373. Bai Jin was impatient for revenge, but she clearly did not expect that for someone like Xianyuan Baijian, even if he could dote on a woman, he absolutely would not listen to a woman's every word, let alone throw his entire heart on a woman. To be able to ascend the holy list and even become one of the top 10 existences on the holy list as a noble star, to Xianyuan Baijian, strength was perhaps the most important thing to him. As for women, to put it bluntly, they were nothing more than something to relieve his fatigue. He could dote on you, could give you anything you wanted, but he could not allow a woman to challenge his bottom line. This was Xianyuan Baijian's way of thinking. Since he had already promised Bai Jin that he would avenge her, then what Bai Jin should do was to quietly wait. Today, she came uninvited and even taught Xianyuan Baijian how to do things on her own. This was undoubtedly overstepping her bounds. So much so that in Xianyuan Baijian's eyes, Bai Jin's actions showed that she did not trust him, that she was doubting him. She did not believe that he could avenge her, did not believe that he could kill Xiao Chun. So Bai Jin wanted to borrow Hua Wushuang's hand to kill Xiao Chun. It could be said that she went for wool and came home shorn. Facing the already slightly angry Xianyuan Baijian, Bai Jin's complexion instantly paled. She knew Xianyuan Baijian's temperament, so much so that if she provoked Xianyuan Baijian's displeasure, then she knew what the outcome would be. The best outcome would be to be thrown to the side like trash, never to be heard of again. She hurriedly, respectfully said to Xianyuan Baijian, Lord husband, you misunderstand. I did not mean that. All right, I know that you've been troubled by the Bai clan's matters recently. I will let it go this time. You may leave. Remember what I said. Since I promised you, Xiao Chun will definitely die. When the time comes, I will naturally deliver his head to you. Bai Jin hurriedly wanted to explain, but Xianyuan Baijian clearly did not intend to give her the chance. So, before she could finish, Xianyuan Baijian directly interrupted her. Hearing those words, Bai Jin naturally did not dare to say anything more. Although she really wanted to console Xianyuan Baijian so that he would not be disappointed in her, unfortunately, she did not have the chance. After Bai Jin left the hall, Xianyuan Baijian stood up expressionlessly. There was no joy or sadness on his face. He walked out of the hall and looked into the distance. His direction was where the 100 Flowers Manor was located, and he spoke indifferently. Xiao Chun, I hope you can give me a little more surprise. Otherwise, it will be a little boring. After saying that, Xianyuan Baijian took a step forward, but his silhouette strangely disappeared. Xianyuan Baijian didn't intend to intervene in the battle between Xiao Chun and Hua Wushuang. Perhaps in Xianyuan Baijian's opinion, he didn't care about these so-called schemes at all. Killing Xiao Chun was just a matter of whether Xianyuan Baijian wanted to or not. In any case, there was less than a month until the human clan assembly. When the time came, there would naturally be a chance to kill Xiao Chun. Everyone was paying attention to the 100 Flowers manor. Everyone wanted to know the result of the battle between Xiao Chun and Hua Wushuang. Would Hua Wushuang be more skilled and suppress Xiao Chun? Or would Xiao Chun continue to create miracles and kill Bai Qiu and then defeat Hua Wushuang? As time passed, more and more cultivators rushed to the 100 Flowers manor. With so many people gathered here, the 100 Flowers manor was already overcrowded. Those with status were able to get a place to stay, while those with ordinary status could only camp in the wild. However, even so, it could not stop the crowd's enthusiasm. Under the anticipation of countless people, 5 days passed quickly. Early in the morning, the 100 Flowers manor was so packed that not even a drop of water could trickle through. This was especially so for the martial art practice field. It was filled with people all around. In the entire martial arts practice field, there were already no less than 50,000 people gathered. Moreover, these people were all people with status and status. At the very least, they were all experts in a region who had the qualifications to sit here. Other than those who were able to enter the martial arts practice field, there were even more cultivators gathered around. There were about 200,000 to 300,000 people. These people could only surround the martial arts practice field from afar. Some were in the sky, some were on the tree branches, some were on the walls, some were on the roofs. Anyway, as long as there was a place to stand, it was filled with people. The experts of the 100 Flowers manor were obviously all mobilized to maintain order. Time passed slowly. In the end, Hua Wushuang arrived at the martial arts practice field accompanied by the manor master of the 100 Flowers manor and her younger brother, Hua Wuyan. Without saying much, Hua Wushuang stepped onto the stage the moment she arrived. She closed her eyes and patiently waited for Xiao Chen's arrival. Hua Wushuang had already appeared. On the other side, Qin Shiru and the other 3 girls were walking towards the martial arts practice field, with Xiao Chun worriedly. Looking at the worried looks of the 4 girls, Xiao Chun laughed softly. "What are you thinking about? It's not a life-and-death battle. Don't worry, it'll be fine." The 4 girls were obviously worried about him. Xiao Chun could only comfort them. Along the way, he said these words to the 4 girls one after another. The group finally arrived at the martial arts practice field. Everyone took the initiative to make a path. Xiao Chun stepped onto the stage directly. As for Qin Shiru and the other 3 girls, they came to the front of the stage and sat together with Long Yang and Feng Ju. At the same table, there was also the manor master of the 100 Flowers manor, some sect masters and elders of the quasi-sage sects, and so on. However, what was surprising was that the person in the middle was not the manor master of the 100 Flowers manor, who was the host. Instead, it was a middle-aged man. This person was an elder of the Haoyan Alliance. He had the cultivation of a half-step great sage. His status was undoubtedly the highest here. Of course, Xiao Chun and Hua Wushuang did not pay attention to this. As Xiao Chun stepped onto the stage, Hua Wushuang slowly opened her eyes. The defensive array around the stage was also activated immediately. Looking at Xiao Chun with battle intent in her eyes, Hua Wushuang took the lead and said, "I have been looking forward to this battle for 5 days. Xiao Chun, I want to fight with you in front of everyone." "Come on then." Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled slightly. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Hua Wushuang did not say anything more. A soaring aura instantly erupted. At the same time, the storage ring in her hand flashed, and a long saber appeared in her hand. Overflowing with battle intent, a terrifying spiritual energy gushed out. With a furious roar, Hua Wushuang instantly rushed toward Xiao Chun. "Let me see what ability you, the Holy Son who is known as the most famous person on the saint ranking, have." At this moment, Although Hua Wushuang was still wearing the flowery robe, the feeling that he gave off had completely changed. From a noble young master, it was as if he had transformed into a ferocious beast that was about to devour people. The long saber in her hand did not stop at all. With a fierce slash, the stage was instantly cut open like tofu. The saber light did not stop at all and directly rushed toward Xiaochun, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.